The office floor is littered with corpses and discarded weapons, as a survivor struggles to catch his breath, questioning his own forgotten death while dark, bladed tentacles erupt from the shadows, forcing him to sprint across the debris-filled room to stay alive, just as he lunges desperately for a discarded handgun, spinning around to face his attackers and firing point-blank into the encroaching mass of limbs, but the bullets barely make a dent against the relentless onslaught. Before a massive tentacle pierces straight through his chest, forcing a cry of agony as his body is hoisted into the air, while his own fingers dig into the pulsating, razor-sharp flesh, screaming for someone to finish the job before he loses consciousness, when a golden warrior suddenly cleaves through the darkness, slashing apart the surrounding tendrils with blinding speed and systematically dismantling the entire nest of tentacles. Finally tearing the blade free from the horror impaling him, as he drops to the floor with a massive, fatal wound, realizing this is finally the end of his miserable existence, while his savior surveys the room for any remaining threats and turns her gaze toward his broken body on the ground. Everything shifted the moment the golden-armored woman appeared in his final moments. She pours her energy into his mangled chest to ease the pain. But the red-haired warrior admits she lacks the power to save his life, and Noah just smiles through the blood, admitting he always wanted to be a hero, reaching out to grip her armor as his strength finally fades away. He asks for her name before he departs this world for good, and she introduces herself as Raelina, a Valkyrie of the Dawn, apologizing to Noah while clutching his hand one last time, thanking him for the sacrifice that ultimately saved their entire world. And just like that, his life ends in silence with his heroism known to no one, until a glowing red orb cracks open in the void, revealing a nightmare realm swarming with demonic entities, where Noah suddenly stands armed with a spear in this new reality. A massive beast lunges at him with a guttural roar, but he impales the creature with a single, precise strike, and turns to face a towering shadow serpent emerging from the darkness. A dark grin spreads across his face as he realizes the world needs him again. He dashes forward to carve a path through the horde of monsters, until he finds himself standing in the cosmos, confused by his own survival and realizes his memories of the transition are becoming dangerously hazy. Noah wonders about the mysterious woman he saw and contemplates if this cosmic void is actually the afterlife, when a voice echoes through the darkness calling him out. Revealing a massive, tentacled entity emerging from the shadows to demand something from him, the creature identifies itself as the incarnation of the void, claiming they gathered his scattered soul fragments to piece him back together. A blue flame ignites in his hand, leaving Noah feeling hollow despite the sudden surge of power. The entity dismisses his confusion and demands the seal hidden inside him. Noah denies any knowledge of such an object. So the entity forces a bond between his soul and the astral script, mocking his resistance while commanding him to tap into the new power. Noah takes a deep breath and decides to cooperate. A bright light erupts from his body as he follows the instructions. The system interface finally initializes and welcomes him to the astral system, confirming his identity and status as a reborn human. He reads the system prompt revealing the seal is fused with his very soul. The entity complains that separating the seal from Noah is nearly impossible, but Noah takes the news with a cold, dry indifference. So the entity offers him a grim ultimatum: serve as their puppet in exchange for a new life and the power to reshape the world. Noah presses the entity for the consequences of a flat refusal, and the entity threatens to strip his soul bare, consuming everything he is to harvest the seal by force, so Noah laughs at the lack of any real choice, sarcastically asking if he needs a lawyer before signing this cosmic contract. But the entity explains that mortal laws do not apply to a pact of spirits. Noah points out the blatant imbalance of power and demands a guarantee of safety, yet the entity confirms there is absolutely no trust to be had. As the system prompt flashes, Noah reflects on the fading memories of his past life and the sensations of being human. He hesitates with his finger hovering over the interface, and ultimately rejects the prompt, choosing to gamble on his own defiance, questioning why a god would even need his permission if they truly held all the cards. The entity finds him uniquely infuriating and lashes out with dark tendrils, which wrap tightly around Noah to restrain his movements, dragging him into a suffocating grip that constricts his body, as the entity decides that if he will not be a puppet, he will be a vessel instead. Binding Noah's limbs with shadows while declaring that his death will satisfy their goal, the incarnation of the void reveals they will wait for his demise to harvest the seal. So the system automatically forces a new pact, causing Noah to scream his defiance at the screen while the entity tightens its hold, warning that his spirit is fracturing under the pressure. The incarnation of the void questions Noah's stubborn refusal, painting a vision of him as a worshipped god among mortals. Dark tendrils continue to constrict his body, but Noah snaps back that he refuses to bow to a monster. The entity demands to know what conditions could possibly make him cooperate, forcing Noah to gather his remaining strength as he struggles against the suffocating shadow. He reminds the entity of their own pact rules concerning spirit strength, and proposes a dangerous gamble where he maintains control of his spirit in exchange for the pact. The incarnation of the void scoffs at the demand, claiming they could erase him from existence whenever they please, but Noah counters with a cold smirk, stating that if they could have done it they already would have. This defiance actually amuses the entity, who lets out a laugh at being bested by a mere mortal. And with a sudden system notification, the pact is sealed, triggering an agonizing transformation process. The void merges directly into Noah's spirit, leaving him clutching his head as the power takes hold. System text confirms the transformation is complete and a rebirth is now underway. The incarnation of the void grins in the darkness, Eager to see how Noah wields this newfound power, Noah's physical form dissolves into a splash of dark energy. A final system notification pings, signaling he has arrived at his destination. In a distant chamber, a ritual is underway as cultists chant praises to the great being of the abyss. Noah suddenly collapses into the center of the ritual circle, disoriented and clutching his head. The cultists recoil in terror, shocked to see a human creature that can actually speak. One elder whispers to his companions that this must be some kind of ancient elemental test, while the chanting group continues to drag their sacrificial offerings toward the spot where Noah now stands. The cultists drag a bound woman toward the center of the room, and they offer her life to Noah, who just dropped into their ritual circle by mistake. Confusion hits him like a truck as he realizes he is the target of their worship. One of the executioners draws his blade to seal the deal with a sacrifice, and Noah stares at the scene, completely baffled by the absurdity of these chanting fanatics, desperate for answers. He frantically searches for any shred of context to survive this mess. His system interface flickers to life, dumping a flood of new data into his vision. A new quest flashes on screen with a clear directive to flee the area immediately. He realizes these people actually mistake him for some ancient, powerful elemental spirit, and he stands up within their circle, playing along to buy himself a few seconds. Noah interrogates the cultists while keeping his distance, trying to gauge just how dangerous they are. The fanatics tremble at his feet, pleading for a boon in exchange for the captive woman. He cringes at the situation but keeps his cool, even as the void inside him mocks his acting skills. The cultists try to explain they are in the material realm, desperate to appease their supposed deity. Noah quickly weighs his options, realizing he needs intel before he makes his next move. He activates a new perk called Identify to scrape some basic info off these creeps. His eyes lock onto the lead warrior, scanning the guy for any exploitable weaknesses. The scan reveals an abyssal executioner and a warden, confirming they are no joke. Needing a way out, he spots a potential distraction buried in his system menu, and he reaches out to grab a scroll, ready to turn this ritual into a total disaster. Noah inspects the scroll, realizing it offers teleportation powers without any actual space magic. The system message confirms this is a premium package for his stay, though the fine print warns of soul corruption, ignoring the potential side effects. He shouts a decree to the cultists that he will accept their plea only if they spare the woman. Murmurs ripple through the crowd as the fanatics try to process his bizarre demand. Noah pivots to keep the pressure on, snapping at them to ask if they are actually going to refuse his order. The cult chief panics, stammering that blood sacrifice is the historical standard, and changing the ritual is unheard of. Cutting him off with a sharp command, Noah strides forward to take control of the situation. He stands over the unconscious Raelina, staring down at her while the cultists watch in confusion, whispering so only she can hear. He tells the captive to pretend he is controlling her when she wakes up. Noah declares that she is now his vessel and orders her to open her eyes and rise to meet the crowd. He raises his hand to command her, putting on a show for the cultists to maintain his fake persona. The cult leaders realize the woman is still unresponsive, and their suspicion toward Noah begins to boil over. Realizing his bluff is falling apart, Noah quickly drops his act and moves to physically secure Raelina. The cult chief finally notices his deception, screaming at the others that she's just a human and they have been played. Rage consumes the executioner, and he orders the immediate capture of Noah as the system warns him the stealth quest has failed. A new survival quest triggers, and Noah wastes no time diving into the fray to escape the dungeon. He tosses a heavy key aside as he makes a break for the exit, desperate to create space between him and his enemies. The executioner lunges at him, but Noah puts his combat stats to work, landing a brutal combo on the guy. The massive warrior reels from the impact, his hands trembling as he struggles to stay in the fight. Noah spots an opening to strike again, raising his fist to finish the engagement before more cultists swarm him. Noah lunges for the dropped key, desperate to arm Raelina for a chance at survival. Tossing the metal toward her, he shouts for the girl to wake up and defend herself. The enemy closes in with a lethal blade, forcing Noah to narrowly dodge the strike. More cultists advance from the shadows, effectively cutting off his only path to safety. A piercing cry echoes through the dungeon as the surrounding foes prepare to descend. Dark energy suddenly erupts from Noah, coiling around his body like a suffocating shroud. The void manifestation takes control, and Noah realizes with dread that he is no longer in command. A shadow blade materializes from the corruption, turning his own defense into a deadly weapon. The incarnation of the void drives a sword straight through Noah, piercing his chest with cold precision. Blood sprays across the stone floor as his body is hoisted into the air by the entity, collapsing onto the ground. Noah coughs up blood while the cultists loom over his broken frame. Heavy blade slams into the floor right beside him, barely missing a killing blow. Flames suddenly engulf the surrounding area, consuming everything in a violent, golden inferno. The heat intensifies and Raelina rises from the floor with her eyes burning bright. She stomps the ground with overwhelming power, sending shockwaves that scatter the terrified cultists. Infernal energy surges from her form, blanketing the entire chamber in a sea of destruction. The cultists scramble to retreat, but the fire tracks them down with relentless accuracy. Sweeping torrents of flame turn the battlefield into a furnace, incinerating the remaining threats. The cult leader screams in fury, drawing a ritual item to confront the powerful manifestation. Raelina ignores him completely, darting forward to finish the survivors while Noah watches from the sidelines. Noah's health drops to a critical 8%, and he barely manages to drag himself across the floor. Another blade pierces his body while the shadow of the void entity looms over him like a death sentence. His blood pools on the stone as he lies helpless, watching the carnage unfold in the dim light. A system notification suddenly erupts, confirming the defeat of the abyssal cultists and the completion of a secret objective. The notification dings repeatedly, marking the death of another enemy right before his fading eyes. More experience points pour in, and the system prompts him to choose a path to salvation. Noah stares at the floating text, wondering if this is some kind of twisted hallucination. His health ticks down to a measly 6%, forcing him to acknowledge the system prompt, collapsing to the ground. He can barely believe he is actually dying in this godforsaken place. The irony of meeting his end right after arriving hits him like a gut punch. Selecting yes on the prompt initiates the awakening process, and reality begins to dissolve around him. Transport to an astral space pulls him away from the dungeon, leaving him disoriented and confused. Blinding light gives way to a neon-soaked arcade where claw machines and plushies fill the room. He wanders through the bizarre game center trying to make sense of this strange transition, spotting someone standing behind the counter. He realizes he is definitely not in the dungeon anymore. A man in a crisp uniform waves at him, looking completely out of place in this surreal setting. Noah glares at the stranger, demanding to know where he is and who exactly he is dealing with. The man identifies himself as Dylan and asks if he is another void god sent to mess with him. Dylan raises his hands in a defensive gesture, telling Noah to calm down and wait for an explanation, admitting that his own subconscious failed to give him a last name. Dylan stands his ground in the neon light. Noah presses Dylan on his lack of a name, and Dylan admits he is a literal manifestation of the void itself, existing solely to uphold the pact that saved Noah's life. So Noah turns toward the glowing arcade machine to test this reality for himself, clutching the joystick as he realizes this entire domain is his own internal astral script. The screen flickers to life with a chime, displaying a prompt that offers him the chance to select 3 distinct paths at once. Dylan explains that this script is a physical manifestation of Noah's own soul and magic, clarifying that this arcade is the exact form Noah's consciousness chose to navigate this space, prompting a moment of nostalgia as Noah recognizes the layout from his childhood. He hesitates over the controls, unsure of his actual purpose in this game, while Dylan notes that guiding and awakening is usually outside his job description. He encourages Noah to just press the start button and see what happens. The system interface loads, analyzing Noah's past life experiences to find an anomaly, listing the available paths and explaining that power, constitution, agility, and mystic are his core stats, and Dylan gestures toward the screen to show how these choices dictate Noah's future growth, warning him that higher-grade paths provide massive boosts but seal off other potential, showing the warrior path as a baseline example with simple stat rewards per level. So Noah cycles through the other options like martial artist and pugilist to compare them, but he finds the standard paths underwhelming and looks to the other machines for better loot. Dylan points toward a healing-focused machine, claiming Noah will likely need the support. Pushing the start button, Noah cycles through the system's cleric and healer options, questioning if he will be fully restored, but Dylan reminds him that death is only being delayed. Noah shifts his focus to a rare path called Exsanguinator, which requires knowledge of blood arts to channel darkness and gain free attribute points. And Dylan agrees that the healing and affliction-based style is a solid choice. Scanning for 2 more potential paths, Noah considers his next move, while Dylan observes the screen and nudges him toward a specific legendary class, but Noah flatly rejects the Void's Herald path to avoid becoming a puppet. Preferring to find a tactical advantage instead, he weighs the benefits of becoming an Astral Walker for improved mystic and agility stats, and considers the Void Hunter path for its natural instincts and increased power. Confirming his decision, Noah selects the Exsanguinator, Astral Walker, and Void Hunter trio, and Dylan lets out a relieved sigh as the final setup is locked in. Pulling the lever and smashing the buttons, Noah initiates the system transformation. Sudden tremors rattle the machine as the interface flickers. Dark energy begins to spill out from the floorboards, manifesting a shadowy, groaning figure directly from the surrounding void. Noah lunges to grab the entity before it can fully materialize, but Dylan warns him that he has forgotten one crucial detail about the process. The air turns heavy with void energy as the system warns Noah that his awakening process will be agonizing. Shadows twist violently around his body, and Dylan watches with a cold detachment that tells Noah he was set up. Dark tendrils bind Noah tightly, forcing him to realize that the path he chose is lashing back against him. The interface pings repeatedly to confirm the successful unlocking of the Exsanguinator, Astral Walker, and Void Hunter paths, along with a massive influx of stat boosts and new abilities like Blood Drain, Blink, and Obliterate. His body fails under the strain as blood pours from his mouth, leaving Noah gasping on the floor. The system prioritizes his survival by activating the Blood Drain skill. Health regeneration kicks in for a short window, pulling his HP from the brink of total collapse. Noah drags himself upright just as the void energy stabilizes within his core. A mysterious hooded figure emerges from the lingering shadows, radiating a lethal intent. Without a moment of hesitation, the stranger lashes out with a swift, punishing strike. Dark tendrils whip through the air in a desperate attempt to fend off the incoming assault. The woman stands her ground, wiping away a smear of blood while eyeing Noah with predatory focus. A new quest notification appears for Noah, tasking him with the extermination of this eldritch monstrosity. She launches herself forward, closing the distance between them with terrifying speed. Noah throws up a desperate block, bracing for the impact of her relentless offensive. Flames erupt from her fist upon contact, signaling that this is not just a physical fight. The The surrounding area is torn apart by the sheer force of their clashing powers. Another assailant joins the fray, forcing Noah to split his attention to survive the onslaught. An explosion of raw energy detonates at the center of the room, leaving the outcome hanging in the balance. Noah stares at the new quest notification, forced into a battle for his life against the monstrosity. His status window reveals a dangerous lack of power, leaving him at a lowly F rank despite his new paths. Every point matters now, forcing him to decide whether to specialize or balance his fragile stats. Determination flickers in Noah's eyes as he commits to the dangerous upgrade. Power surges through his core as the system registers his final attribute allocation. Fire consumes the battlefield while the void monstrosity launches another brutal, flaming assault. Impact tremors rattle the area as the woman slams into the ground. Destruction ripples outward from the collision. Threatening to bury everything in rubble, solid stone shatters into lethal debris under the weight of her crushing strike. Fear registers on the enemy's face as he realizes the sheer scale of the incoming destruction. Boulders rain down upon the battlefield, pinning the void monstrosity under a relentless bombardment. Swirling dark energy attempts to shield the target from the crushing weight above. A massive shockwave detonates, clearing the air and revealing the aftermath of the blast. Grabbing a blade from his inventory, Noah prepares to capitalize on the momentary opening. Quick access to his storage lets him arm himself before his opponent can recover. The sword manifests in his grip, giving Noah the reach he desperately needed, eyes locked on the chaos. He scans the debris for his next target. He lunges toward Aurelia, hoping to intercept her mid-attack before she regains her momentum. Dark tendrils surge around the void monstrosity, signaling a desperate final stand against Noah's charge. The monstrosity cries out in panic, claiming that Victral Nafar is merely a misunderstanding. The void monstrosity claims to be a divine messenger, but Noah is not buying the act for a second, calling the creature out on its blatant lies while holding up his system interface, which only makes the entity grow more agitated as its charade falls apart. So Noah produces a scroll, mocking the creature by claiming it's a direct message from the void itself, and the entity pauses, clearly rattled by the sight of what looks like an official divine decree, unable to process that Noah might actually have real correspondence from their supposed master. While the entity's rage boils over because it knows the contents of that paper are a death sentence. Forcing Noah to react quickly as a lethal projectile hurtles toward his head, he activates his Astral Walker blink ability to vanish from the immediate line of fire, reappearing behind the monstrosity before it can even track his movement, and the momentum of his repositioning sets him up for a clean strike, drawing a blade from his inventory with one fluid, practiced motion, the weapon materializing in his grasp as he prepares to land the killing blow. Swinging the steel with full force toward the creature's exposed back, which connects with a brutal, piercing impact that cuts through the entity's defenses, driving the blade deep into its chest and forcing a spray of dark blood. Noah follows through with the strike, sliding his feet to maintain perfect balance. As the monstrosity gurgles in pain and tries to comprehend its sudden defeat, he yells for Aurelia to take her opening while the creature is pinned and reeling. And she immediately lunges forward to finish the job as the void monstrosity collapses under her assault. The void monstrosity loses its final footing as Aurelia forces it back, and she launches a concentrated burst of energy to shatter its remaining defenses, sending the corrupted chief reeling as his physical form begins to disintegrate, while Noah stays airborne to track the creature's final, desperate attempt to flee. Aurelia closes the distance with a flurry of strikes that leave no room for recovery, landing a decisive blow that snaps the chief's head back and ends his resistance. Then she delivers a final flaming kick that obliterates the entity once and for all, clearing the battlefield as the system pings the defeat of the abyssal cultist chief. Noah watches his own status screens update with massive gains in level and core attributes. While Aurelia catches her breath, her own stats climbing as the quest rewards finalize, and he notes the system logs confirming their progress toward unlocking the next graft, letting out a long overdue sigh of relief now that the immediate threat is neutralized. Aurelia approaches the exhausted Noah to demand answers about his origins and true identity, pointing out the suspicious summoning circle that brought him here in the first place. Noah admits he has no simple explanation to give after being betrayed by his own people, but she remains wary, keeping a flame ready in her hand while questioning his humanity. The sheer intensity of her interrogation forces him to weigh his next words carefully, and he decides that concealing the truth about his origin is no longer worth the risk, telling her plainly that he is not from this world, shattering the last of her doubts. While she pivots to ask if he is connected to the mysterious Iron Fists faction, Noah swears he has no connection to the Iron Fists, but Aurelia keeps her guard up with a flame flickering in her palm, eventually softening her tone to apologize for her aggressive outburst. Admitting the betrayal by her own party left her on a hair trigger, yet she remains curious about the bizarre way he speaks, so Noah tries to explain the RPG-like quest system guiding his actions, which leaves Aurelia completely baffled by the strange, unknown terminology, forcing him to drop the jargon and just admit he was reborn here. And she struggles to process the claim since resurrections require divine intervention, while he insists that he is just as confused by this reality as she is. Eventually she accepts his sincerity, noting how rare and strange he truly is, so she decides to drop the interrogation and sits down to rest, moving into a meditative stance to recover her dwindling mana reserves, and she glances at Noah to confirm if he understands the process. While the aura surrounding her body begins to glow with renewed energy, she points out that he is severely depleted and needs to recharge, causing Noah to realize that he has no clue how to control his own aura, and he feels a sudden surge of physical discomfort while trying to mimic her. So she instructs him to avoid dangerous rituals while he learns the basics. Then a system notification pings, signaling he is finally beginning to adapt. The system confirms Noah has unlocked the meditation skill and his regeneration rate is climbing, leaving him to monitor his stats while his mana reserves slowly top off, and he pulls up his profile to review his base stats and new ability suite, specifically focusing on the Obliterate skill to see what the void energy actually does. Noting that the skill description promises total annihilation of anything in his path, then he activates the void energy which immediately begins draining his health, forcing Noah to rely on Exsanguinator to balance the rapid loss of life, just as his mana hits maximum and Orlia decides it is finally time to move. So they head deeper into the ruins and stumble across the body of Victril, leading them to investigate the fallen enemy for any potential loot or clues. Where Orlia spots a high-tier storage device clutched in the corpse's hand, suggesting they bring it back to the city to bypass the magical locks, although Noah wonders if he can simply transfer the contents into his own inventory, yet she warns him the device is blood-bound and requires the original owner's key. So they search the area until Orlia locates the necessary key on Victril, and she tosses the object to Noah so he can attempt to interface with it, which he inspects closely while scanning for a way to override the restrictions. Then the system detects the device and asks if he wants to pull the contents, causing Noah to confirm the transfer with a quick tap of the interface, and his inventory fills with mana stones, rare daggers, and the ring from the cultist. Orli keeps hunting for a cellar key while Noah finishes sorting through the loot, and she spots the item in his hand, wondering where on earth he managed to find it. So Noah explains that the storage device from Victril was packed with gear, including a healing potion, some blades, and a stash of mana stones for them to use, leaving Orlia shocked that he can just pull items out of a locked device like that. Then Noah decides to swap his tattered clothes for a clean robe from his inventory, though he pulls out a creepy gold band that the system identifies as the Ring of Abyssal Eye, which Orlia confirms is cursed, even if it does offer a massive boost to mana capacity. And Noah watches the ring pulse with a life of its own as his stats begin to climb, seeing the identification upgrade from basic to intermediate as the ring synchronizes with him. Meanwhile, Orlia tests her own power, letting out a sudden burst of flame that catches him off guard, and Noah glances at her with his new perception, finally able to read her actual level. Realizing with genuine surprise that she is already pushing level 68 as a flame warden, so he turns his attention back to the gear and starts testing out the twin daggers, marveling at how balanced the steel feels as he swings the blades through the air while Orli paces the room, her hands glowing with the heat of her own mana, and she focuses on the fire dancing between her fingers, clearly lost in thought, suddenly asking Noah if the recent fight was his very first time taking a life. And she stares him down, claiming her experience in this line of work makes it obvious, so Noah wonders why she keeps doing this dangerous job if it is purely for the thrill. The intense flames reflecting her resolve as Orlia declares her mission to fight against the void, followed by her direct question about whether Noah feels any remorse for his first kill, and he admits he does not regret it since it was a clear case of survival. So she nods in agreement, confirming that those cultists would have surely claimed more innocent victims, after which Noah interacts with his system interface to pull up the newly acquired items, wondering aloud if he has the potential to succeed as a real adventurer, hearing her praise his composure during the chaos and her belief in his hidden potential, which earns a rare, genuine smile from Noah as he accepts her rare validation. Then he shifts the topic to the mysterious tomes, asking how to actually unlock their power, so Orlia offers to draw the necessary ritual circle since the books require a conduit, but suddenly the air shifts and energy begins to spiral out of control, and Noah realizes his ring is resonating with the books, bypassing the need for circle, causing the tomes to hover and open on their own as the system reacts, displaying a prompt to unlock a site-based ability, which he accepts without hesitation, after which the system forces him to choose a specialization path for his new skill, so he taps the Void Hunter path, consuming the tome to finalize the upgrade, and a notification chimes to confirm he has successfully unlocked Void Hunter's Eye, while his ring levels up in tandem, surging with dark energy to meet the new power. Because a beam of light erupts from his forehead, marking the manifestation of his third eye, and Noah finally opens his eyes, fully integrated with his new terrifying perception. Noah marvels at his new perception, comparing the world to a high-definition iSky dream, and he turns to Orlia, excitedly claiming he can finally see the flow of mana, but Orlia corrects him, clarifying that he is actually witnessing her personal aura. So Noah focuses his gaze on his own hand to confirm he can see his aura too, and he blurts out that it's sick, quickly clarifying to a confused Orlia that he means it is awesome, before he moves on to the second tome, triggering the system prompt to unlock an infliction ability, after which the tome is consumed, granting him the Exsanguinator ability and the passive bleed status effect, noting that this rare tier skill allows him to coat his weapons in a lethal bleeding agent. Then Orlia warns him about mana stones, insisting he only consumes F-grade mana to avoid poisoning, because anything stronger causes temporary strength boosts followed by debilitating paralysis, while Orlia flexes to illustrate the temporary strength spike one might feel, but she quickly crashes, demonstrating how the paralysis and pain make it a lethal mistake, and she describes the worst-case scenario where the user explodes on the spot, which Noah realizes means a slow, agonizing death as mana shreds the body from within. So he pockets the stone, focused on the immediate task of clearing the dungeon, and they begin patrolling the chamber, with Noah deciding to loot every magical artifact they find, while Orlia shares that she is searching for a specific person who was once held here, causing her to clench her fist as she recalls being the final survivor of this dungeon, where they now tread carefully to avoid hidden traps and lingering cultist remnants, and the pair ventures deeper into the corridor, ready to face whatever horrors remain. Noah and Orlia continue their trek through the dim dungeon corridors, as Orlia checks if Noah still has the storage device handy, so he hands the golden container over to her without hesitation, and she ignites a magical flame over her palm, raising the light to illuminate a massive wall covered in glowing ancient runes. Where Noah observes the script and wonders about the lost souls behind these carvings, because Orlia points out that human cruelty remains consistent regardless of the world, noting how the pursuit of power, misguided beliefs, and family pressure lead people astray, while she explains that these cultists were adults who made the conscious choice to join, and they move further along the wall, noticing the structure flickering like a mirage. So Noah warns her that they need to jump to avoid getting trapped in the illusion, but he confesses that he refuses to victimize everyone he fights, especially those with no choice, though Orlia counters that the priests have been fighting the abyss for thousands of years, and she reveals the true nature of their ritual, where victims are burned alive in a brutal display, which essentially acts as a public execution for anyone the cult deems unworthy. So Noah trembles at the sheer cruelty of it all, especially imagining innocent children being forced, yet Orli coldly reminds him that they consider it a painless execution, until they reach a strange, shimmering gate that catches both of their attention, and they realize the entrance is magically sealed off from the rest of the path, so Orli tells Noah to stand back while she prepares to punch the lock open. Orli ignites her fist with a burst of magical energy, and she drives a powerful punch straight into the sealed gate, shattering the magical barrier with a massive explosion of light and force, so Noah dryly notes her direct approach as they step into the cult chief's study, and he observes the cold, imposing architecture while they scan the room for valuables, but Orlia flips through a nearby book only to find it completely devoid of secrets, so Noah suggests they look elsewhere, convinced the real treasure must be hidden. Yet a sudden, rhythmic tapping sound draws their attention to the bookshelf, and Noah begins pulling on the volumes to test for a concealed mechanism, which triggers a system notification the moment he touches a specific inconspicuous tome, revealing a rare skill book for advanced abyssal call that pops up in his interface. But Noah dismisses the system alert because finding the secret area is his top priority. So he starts pushing books aside, mimicking the investigative tropes he remembers from movies, and suddenly he strikes gold as a specific book slides back to reveal a hidden keyhole, which grants him a magical golden key that manifests right out of the shelf. So Noah carefully inserts the key into the lock and gives it a firm turn, and the entire bookshelf begins to grind and shift aside with a mechanical groan until a concealed passageway clicks open, revealing a path they hadn't seen before. So Orli marvels at how he solved the puzzle using logic from his own world, and they prepare to enter the dark, hidden space that the cult chief guarded so fiercely. A glowing orb of light manifests at Noah's fingertip, casting a revealing glare over the dark, sprawling corridor they just uncovered, but a sudden system chime interrupts his focus as a notification window pops up, confirming a new hidden quest titled Blood behind the walls that warns of dangerous secrets. Just as a horde of fleshy monstrosities launches an ambush from the shadows, so Noah unleashes a massive burst of flame that incinerates the front line instantly. Then he follows up with a powerful leaping strike, crushing another wave under his boots, while the creatures shriek in panic as they realize their numbers will not save them. Yet Noah keeps them at bay with a wall of fire, forcing the mass to retreat, hearing the pained, desperate cries of the entities that sound disturbingly human. And Orlia joins the fray, channeling her mana to intensify the inferno, until a towering column of fire engulfs the hallway, purging the remnants of the pack, but from the ashes a lingering, severed piece of flesh still twitches on the floor, which leaves Noah baffled as he questions why the creature refuses to stay down. So he reaches out to inspect the pulsating remains, only to feel a surge of agony as the flesh reacts to his touch. And the remains suddenly mutate, snapping into a monstrous, toothy form that lunges for him, while the system immediately registers a debuff that cripples his stats and health regeneration, causing Noah to cough up blood as the sudden drain hits his physical state, but he barely manages to dodge the creature's jagged fangs as it slams into the wall. Noah desperately triggers his blink ability to create some breathing room, and he hits the ground hard, his body struggling under the weight of the system's debuff, while Orlia dives into the fray, lashing out at the mutated horror with everything she has. But the creature ignores her strike, focusing its hunger entirely on its prey. Then the beast unleashes a long, barbed tongue that whips through the air with lethal intent, so Noah blinks again to evade the strike, narrowly avoiding a gruesome end. And the system confirms his maneuver, leveling up his skill to 21, yet the monstrosity slams into the stone, its raw power shattering the floorboards. Seeing the creature's relentless pursuit, Noah realizes he's completely backed into a corner, and he forces himself to stay focused despite the mounting pressure. While the horror charges forward, its heavy footsteps echoing through the entire chamber, now Noah activates his skill again, teleporting directly onto the creature's back. And he plunges his blade into its hide, only for the system to report the monster resists the blade. But the beast swings its massive tail, forcing Noah to blink away before he gets crushed. As his mana reserves plummet to 9%, the system flashes a critical warning. Then the monster's relentless aura forces a flinch from him, and Noah quickly downs a mana potion to stabilize, barely shaking off a minor poison effect, before he unleashes a flurry of strikes that carve deep into the creature's flesh. So he leaps clear of the thrashing mass, gaining distance to catch his breath, and he realizes his mana is nearly dry, leaving him one final chance to drain the beast. The system confirms the flesh-grafted horror has resisted his ability, so Noah blinks to reposition himself away from the snapping jaws, striking with a quick slash that finally applies the bleed effect. But his mana hits a critical 4%, forcing him to keep moving. He crunches down a mana stone to stave off exhaustion, seeing his stats jump while the monster lunges. He blinks clear, gathering dark energy in his palm. Noah prepares to unleash everything. He drives the Void Hunter skill straight into the beast, vaulting onto its back to maintain the pressure, eyes locked on his target. Noah senses an opening, spinning with a heavy slash that opens a massive wound. He follows up with another strike, carving deep into the hide, leveling up his skills as he dances around the creature's reach. Noah decides to end the cycle once and for all, plunging downward with lethal intent. The blade sinks home as his mana buffs expire, and he suffers from paralysis and migraine as his resources vanish. Watching in disbelief as the monster refuses to stay down, thick tendrils shoot out and wrap around his body, pulling him helplessly into the creature's crushing grip. Dragged into the monster's gullet, Noah faces certain death, but he plunges his blade directly into the creature's internal tissues, causing the beast to shudder as his unexpected counter lands, triggering a critical bleed effect that begins to sap its life, and his system floods with alerts as blood drain restores his own health and purges the paralysis status. Collapsing the massive horror to the floor as its life force drains away, Noah drags his battered body free from the remains. Standing over the carcass while the shadows of the dungeon pulse around him, and the system confirms the flesh-grafted horror is finally defeated, showering him with level-ups and a massive injection of attribute points, including a legendary tome for completing the Vengeance quest. While an unknown entity begins absorbing the creature's essence, Noah struggles to maintain consciousness as the drain continues, finally hitting the stone floor as his body reaches its absolute limit. Lying in a pool of blood while the mysterious absorption nears completion, his trembling hand reaches out as the system alerts continue to chime. Scratching at the floor in a desperate attempt to stabilize, mana begins to flood back into his system to force a recovery, yet a sudden violent surge of energy racks his entire frame, leaving him gasping in agony as he demands to know what is happening. The system alerts confirm Noah is suffering from severe migraine, exhaustion, and mana poisoning. While Orlai approaches to find him barely conscious in a pool of his own blood, noting that it is a miracle both of them survived the encounter, and Orlai laments her own exhaustion and failure to stay alert during the fight, stopping right beside Noah to assess the damage to his body. She identifies the mana poisoning and promises to help him purge the lethal buildup, explaining that draining his mana reserves is the only way to stabilize his condition. So Noah sits up to begin the dangerous process of emptying his core, meeting Orlai's gaze as he prepares to force the mana out, and he triggers the drain, causing a sharp surge of light to pulse from his chest, while his internal systems flash warnings as his reserves drop toward zero, until he collapses forward from the sudden drain and the system confirms his mana is gone, which successfully clears the poisoning effect but leaves him gasping for air. While Orlai cautions him that his natural regeneration will take a day or two to stabilize, prompting Noah to request water or a potion to speed up his recovery. So Orlai hands him a canteen and he drinks it down in one go, after which Noah decides to immediately test his new abilities despite his weakened state, and he pulls up the interface to activate the reward he earned earlier, while the legendary Tome of Lifeblood materializes to offer him a new skill. And Noah accepts the prompt, unlocking the Exsanguinator ability as the book glows with power. The system reveals that Lifeblood permanently doubles his health regeneration and grants immunity to low-grade poisons, so Noah explains to Orlai that he can now bank extra vitality to use as a healing burst, but Orlai just scoffs at how ridiculously unfair his latest power-up seems to be, which Noah shrugs off by noting that her entire world is pretty unfair from his perspective. Then another system notification pops up asking if he wants to consume a mysterious shard, and Noah swipes the prompt away to accept, unlocking a fragment of infinite potential, thinking this will finally level up his Identify skill to get the answers he needs, but he notices the item description is corrupted and asks Orlai if that is normal. Suddenly, the system goes haywire with rapid alerts about modifying his genetic code. So Noah collapses as the surrounding interface starts glitching out of control, while Orlai calls out to him in alarm, not understanding what is happening to his body. The system generates a new quest requiring him to hunt down scattered shards of infinite power, but the physical strain causes Noah to cough up a massive amount of black sludge, as the interface declares a transformation is incomplete and forces a Devour purification. And Noah screams as the purge tears through him, leaving Orlai backing away in fear. Then he continues retching up the dark essence that was poisoning his system from within, until he loses consciousness and hits the floor, completely drained by the violent process, which results in the system confirming his migraine and mana fatigue are finally gone, and the purge leaves Noah lying broken on the ground with his attributes permanently boosted. So he remains slumped there as Orlai approaches to check if he is still alive. Orlai stares at the pool of black sludge, wondering just how toxic Noah really is, stepping under the spray of a shower to wash off the rest of the grime, where Noah reflects on the absurdity of his day from office work to absorbing blood. The system pings that he has been cleansed and that his exhaustion is finally gone, so he steps out of the stall feeling like a completely different person than before. Sitting down on the bed to check his updated status screen, the attribute window displays his current power and constitution stats with 30 points to spare. Swiping through the pages, he catches sight of a new class detail that stops him cold. The Devourer class description highlights a primal hunger and a 5% attribute boost. Scrolling down to the growth attribute section, he realizes his power can now scale manually. Channeling his will to trigger the growth, his stats spike across the board in real time. Orlaya enters the room, surprised to find him awake and moving around again, offering her a turn in the shower. He tries to act casual about the recent ordeal. She brushes off the offer, mentioning she already cleaned up earlier while he was out, explaining that she spent the last 2 hours searching the area to make sure they were safe. Noah hums in thought, considering how much time he actually lost to the transformation. Asking if she is ready to leave this place behind, he signals it is time to move. She agrees instantly and leads the way out. Eager to reach their next destination, riding off on mounts through the forest, they spot a group of travelers up ahead, and they realize their path is about to cross with another group of adventurers. The villagers swarm them with cheers the moment they roll into town. And Noah jokingly asks Orlaya if this is the standard welcome everywhere they go. She clarifies that such warm greetings are unique to these smaller, isolated settlements. Descending the long stone path, they finally reach the town gates on their mounts. Dismounting in the center of the bustling streets, they prepare to find lodging. Walking toward the local stables, they decide to drop off their gear for a bit. Noah thanks his mount with a pat before handing off the care instructions. He instructs the stable hand to feed the creatures hay mixed with crushed mana cores. The worker eyes the shimmering stone in his palm, clearly impressed by the generous payment. Orlaya explains that tipping the staff ensures better service, a universal truth across worlds. She then warns Noah to keep his background vague since outerworlders often invite trouble, teasing him about his lack of social awareness. She points out how much he sticks out. She jokes that even a talking plant would be less suspicious than his current behavior. Stepping into the inn, they are greeted by the host who offers them a room. The innkeeper asks how long they plan to stay as he opens his ledger. Noah pays for a single night with 2 beds and accepts the key. She offers him a chance to rest while she handles some business. He declines, preferring to hang around the common room to enjoy the rare peace. Realizing he made another social blunder, he laughs it off with the innkeeper. She playfully scolds him to stop the nonsense and heads off to complete her errands. The innkeeper leans in to chat about Orlaya, clearly amused by Noah's connection to such a feisty companion. Sliding a drink over, the man remarks that anyone coming from the Lost Woods is either a total amateur or a death-seeking adventurer, and since he can't imagine a traveler skipping a drink after that journey, he insists on keeping the ale coming. Noah agrees it's a bit early for a buzz, but decides a little liquid courage sounds like a solid idea. So the innkeeper bellows for service and the tavern staff brings a fresh, frothy mug to their table. Introducing himself as Noah Brown, he explains to the local host that he's indeed new to these parts, taking a long, contemplative pull from his drink. He decides to be honest with his new acquaintance, admitting that he actually awakened his powers just yesterday. He watches the innkeeper nearly spit out his own ale in surprise. The man warns him that wandering the wilds as an E-ranker is a shortcut to an early grave, though Noah just shrugs off the danger, finding the drink way better than expected, clarifying that he only awakened by pure luck to survive a lethal encounter. He mentions Orlaya as just helping him get his bearings. They shake hands as the innkeeper introduces himself as Lorien, a former adventurer who knows the risks of the life. Lorien reveals he retired after losing his magic, feeling fortunate to have made it out with his life intact. Curiosity getting the better of him, Noah asks what kind of monster caused such a mess. Lorien recalls a northern dungeon quest where his party was ambushed by something that surged up from the deep without warning, describing a terrifying, pearly, translucent entity that slaughtered 2 teammates instantly and sapped his own mana. He admits he still has no idea what that nightmare actually was or where it came from. Noah suddenly gets a system notification about being intoxicated, only for his lifeblood ability to instantly cleanse the alcohol away. Confused by his own body refusing to get a buzz, he realizes his constitution stat is actively fighting the booze. Deciding he'd rather just enjoy the drink properly, he taps the interface to deactivate his lifeblood ability. Noah slams his mug down, demanding another round to keep the celebration going, laughing as the innkeeper points out that his ability is basically a built-in hangover cure, yet the system immediately tags him with intoxication. And before he can even blink, his lifeblood passive purges the alcohol right out of his system, shifting gears. Noah asks Lorien for more details on those strange disappearances he mentioned earlier, confirming the rumors. The innkeeper explains that people started vanishing into the woods half a year ago. 2 villagers went to investigate and simply never returned. Search parties of adventurers followed, but they found absolutely nothing, eventually leading the town to stop sending people in. Things got worse when the mines collapsed, swallowing up those who tried to rescue the missing. With the tunnels now sealed, Noah learns that another group ignored the warnings and headed back into the dark 2 days ago. Rumors are swirling that the mines will be shuttered permanently, which would destroy the village's only source of winter income. Someone in the shadows flashes a glowing crystal, while Lorien notes that the sounds of howling and crying coming from the pit have everyone terrified of an undead infestation. The prospect of a guild-led purge means forced evacuation, a fate the villagers are desperate to avoid. Noah steps out into the crisp air to clear his head, observing the townspeople as they go about their day, unaware of the crisis brewing under their feet. A frantic local approaches them with news that the mayor is officially sealing the mines following a return of one of the scouting adventurers. Noah realizes the village is staring down an economic collapse if they lose the mines. He follows the townspeople toward the center of the commotion and finds a crowd gathered outside the town hall, waiting for answers about their livelihood. The mayor faces off against a stone-carved miner in the town hall, where Jerome insists that sealing the mine will starve the village to death, even as the mayor pleads for order, claiming he is acting to ensure their survival. Noah runs into an acquaintance mid-argument, both clearly surprised to find the other there. He explains he is here to grill the mayor about the adventuring team that betrayed him. Orlia questions if they should intervene, but Noah decides it is time to take matters into his own hands. She tells him to be more assertive, watching as he steps forward to cut through the noise. Noah calls out to the arguing group, demanding they stop the infighting for the sake of the village. He proposes they start working toward a solution together, asking the miner to reveal his identity. Calm confidence radiates from Noah as he offers his help. The group relocates to the mine entrance, a place once teeming with life and now eerily silent. The miner explains that this used to be a dungeon, its core harvested long before the collapse. Noah questions if a dungeon can truly die, realizing the scale of the threat they're facing. He reflects on how valuable a tamed dungeon is to any kingdom. Orlia warns that if this is an undead dungeon, it constitutes a nation-level threat. The miner confirms it is far more dangerous than a standard Earth-type dungeon. They stand before the sealed entrance, with Noah wondering if he can simply force his way through. Orlia tests the barrier with a sharp strike, as Noah tests the structural integrity himself, realizing the rocks are more than they appear. They stare into the dark tunnel, realizing that clearing this will require more than just raw power. Mana stones are embedded in the cave walls, suggesting the dungeon is regenerating its resources. Orlia warns Noah to stay focused, reminding him that former dungeons often hide residual threats. He calls up his interface to scan for magic, revealing hidden details in the gloom. The miner notes the unnatural silence of the area, explaining that local wildlife fled as the noises began. They push deeper into the facility, keeping their guard up against the encroaching dark. Orlia reaches the main section and points out the path forward. Boots crunch over debris as they step into the heart of the mine. Carnage greets them on the floor, bodies of previous victims scattered near the wooden scaffolding. A sudden, nauseating sound echoes through the tunnel, forcing them to cover their mouths. Screams erupt from the depths, chilling the air and putting everyone on high alert. Orlia shouts for them to stop, her eyes locked on a movement in the shadows. She blinks forward to intercept the threat, closing the distance in a flash of light. A survivor lies broken on the ground, his life fading into the cold stone floor. Noah kneels beside the man to check his status, asking what horrific force caused this. The victim gasps out a final warning to run, his body twisting under a dark influence. Shadowy tendrils lash out from the man, and the system identifies him as a void-grafted human. Orlia cries out for Noah to retreat, realizing the infection is far more volatile than expected. His interface chimes with a quest completion alert, but the danger has only just begun. A new mission pop-up reveals the source as the sinister research of Victral Navfar. Noah readies his blade as the creature fully transforms, looming over him with jagged, monstrous intent. Orlia calls out to Mayor Jerome, urging him to create some serious distance. And the mayor wisely agrees to fall back before the situation gets even messier. The void-grafted human erupts with a swarm of shadowy tendrils, turning into a nightmare. It launches itself forward with terrifying speed, forcing Noah to dodge the initial strike. The creature uses an Astral Walker blink to close the gap. Catching Noah completely off guard, realization hits Noah that the monster possesses the exact same mobility as his own skills. A massive blast of heat erupts nearby as Orlia unleashes her flames to reclaim control. She stands ready to provide cover fire while keeping her focus entirely on the target. Noah searches the smoke for his next opening, wondering where the creature repositioned itself. Sweat and blood trickle down his face while he recalibrates his strategy mid-fight. Spotting the beast hovering high above them, he signals Orlia to prepare for another volley. The monster descends in a blur of motion, mocking them as it prepares to strike again. Noah activates his own blink to avoid the incoming onslaught at the very last second. Appearing behind the entity with blades drawn, he readies a counterattack before it can react. Metal clashes against shadows as Noah fights to survive the relentless sequence of attacks. Orlia interrupts the exchange with a massive torrent of fire directed straight at the creature. The entity screeches in agony as the flames begin to burn through its dark defenses. She keeps the pressure high, forcing the monster to retreat back toward the cavern wall. The surrounding stone begins to groan and crack under the intensity of the magical output. Orlia rips a massive boulder from the ceiling to crush the creature while it remains exposed. Orlia drops the massive boulder with absolute precision, bathing the cavern in a sea of flame. Noah lunges toward the impact zone, his eyes locked on the spot where the creature was pinned. The impact shatters the stone floor and detonates in a blinding explosion of fire and debris. He grips his blade tighter, knowing this is the moment to finish the job once and for all. Dashing into the smoke, Noah weaves through the charred remains to find the entity. Shadowy tendrils whip out from the wreckage, forcing him to parry in a desperate blur of steel. Noah drives his daggers deep into the monster, triggering a system notification for necrosis and blood drain. The void-grafted human shrieks in agony as its life force begins to hemorrhage. Fighting back, the creature lashes out with its tentacles, sending Noah reeling through the air. A system alert confirms the monster resisted the poison and is already regenerating its health. Steel meets tentacle in a shower of sparks while the entity blinks back to full speed. Orlia tracks the creature's rapid movements, her hands glowing with restless, high-intensity mana. Noah teleports behind the monster to land a killing blow, but it vanishes before his blades connect. Blood drips from Noah's chest as his interface shows his health plummeting to a critical 7%. Gulping down a health potion, he struggles to stabilize his vitals before the next strike. A new system notification confirms he has gained poison resistance just as the fight escalates. Orlia senses the opening and channels her remaining fire into a concentrated, scorching beam. The flames erupt with terrifying heat, engulfing the monster in another wave of destruction. Dark tendrils scatter across the ground as the smoke clears, but Noah notices the creature is still moving. The system identifies the entity as mutating into a higher form, leaving them no time to recover. Noah forces his blade through the encroaching darkness, shattering the monster's defenses with a desperate burst of power. Launching himself directly into the heart of the mutation, he closes the distance before the beast can fully adapt. Leaping over a sweeping strike, he tries to force a final confrontation despite his dwindling physical state. Orlia screams for Noah to retreat, realizing the creature's next phase is too volatile to engage at close range. Dark tendrils whip out with lethal precision, catching Noah off guard and forcing him into a defensive crouch. One strike connects with his shoulder, tearing through his armor and leaving him momentarily open to follow up. The monster looms over him, its massive eye locking onto its prey while its mass continues to expand. Energy detonates in a localized shockwave, throwing Noah across the clearing as the void-grafted entity surges with unstable power. His interface flashes with a critical hit notification, confirming he has lost an arm in the brutal exchange. A secondary system prompt kicks in, triggering lifeblood regeneration to counteract the rapid loss of his vitals. The poison begins to overwhelm his system now that the bleeding status has been purged from his arm. Grabbing his severed limb, Noah grips the hilt of his blade tight. Refusing to let the injury end the fight, shoving his arm back into place, he forces his body to stabilize while his poison resistance climbs to level 2. Orlia unleashes a torrent of flame, pinning the mutating monster against the cavern wall to buy Noah some breathing room. Pillars of fire erupt across the battlefield, consuming the void-grafted entity in a desperate bid to incinerate its core. The creature blinks through the inferno, barely avoiding total annihilation as it prepares a counterattack. Noah dashes through the lingering smoke, his eyes locked on the monster's exposed weak point slamming into the entity. He buries his blade deep into its chest, ignoring the pain of his own injuries. A system prompt signals the Void Hunter skill is active, turning his strike into a final, crushing blow, tearing through the remaining void tissue. Noah forces his resistance and lifeblood levels to spike, finally ending the nightmare. Noah parries the incoming shadow tendrils, his movements fluid despite the heavy toll on his body. Orlia signals for him to hold back, gathering her energy for a massive, concentrated release. Obeying her command, Noah pivots away to avoid being caught in the impending blast. The cavern erupts in a blinding wall of flame, completely incinerating the immediate area. Silence falls as the fire dissipates, revealing that their target has vanished from the center. Realizing the entity relies on shadows to blink, Noah proposes they flood the entire chamber with fire. Orlia centers her focus, weaving her mana into a swirling vortex of heat. Raw power surges from her palms, expanding outward to coat every corner of the room. The massive inferno intensifies, turning the arena into a furnace that leaves no dark space to hide. The void-grafted entity struggles to maintain its form, desperately trying to scramble into a patch of shade. Noah lunges forward, his blade catching the creature mid-flee to prevent its retreat. Spatial distortion flickers, showing the enemy attempting one final, desperate teleportation, shrieking in pain. The entity is ripped back into reality, forced to confront the duo in the open. Noah warns the creature to stop its gambling, knowing his next move will shift the tides for good. His system interface projects a glowing blue screen, displaying a unique artifact he just recovered. Holding up the letter of the Void God, Noah prepares to exert authority over the corrupted hunter. The entity hisses as it recognizes the relic, sensing the overwhelming power radiating from the parchment. Activating the Voidborn perk, Noah channels a dark, oppressive aura that pins the creature in place. Demanding the immediate release of its captive, he forces the entity to obey his command through sheer pressure. The creature finally tosses the prisoner aside, retreating while Noah maintains his dominance over the space. Noah swings his blade with lethal precision, carving a path straight through the void-grafted enemy. The creature's core shatters upon impact, dissolving into nothingness as its hold on reality finally snaps. Orlia shouts that it is her turn. Surging forward in a streak of pure momentum, she unleashes a torrent of searing flames, engulfing the area in a massive, incinerating blast. A deafening explosion rocks the chamber, obliterating the remnants of the entity in a flash of light. Walking through the dissipating smoke, Noah approaches the charred remains left on the battlefield. He finds the stone-carved miner lying amidst the wreckage, barely holding on to the last shreds of life. The miner begs for a quick release from his agony, his body twisted by the void's corruption. Noah watches the man with a somber expression, knowing exactly what must be done to end this. Driving his blade home, he activates Blood Drain to strip away the lingering necrosis poison. The miner whispers a final word of gratitude, his eyes fading as he finds peace at last. System alerts flood the air, confirming the quest completion and awarding Noah the abyssal summon. Orlia joins him to observe the grim scene, noting the tragic fate of the man trapped inside. A blue interface prompt flickers into existence. Asking Noah if he wishes to consume the remains, he taps the affirmative option, choosing to harvest the memories embedded within the fallen. Kneeling over the body, he begins the process of absorption, his aura spiking with raw energy. The system confirms the progress of his Devour skill, logging the stolen experiences into his own. Sudden, violent waves of traumatic imagery crash into Noah's mind, causing him to reel back in pain. Flashes of inhuman suffering and dark rituals play out before his eyes, revealing the scale of the horror. Recognizing the name Victril and the abyssal cult, Noah vows to hunt them down for these atrocities. The system triggers a new impossible difficulty quest to exterminate the abyssal cult. Orlia urges Noah to leave the area immediately so he can finally receive proper medical care. They exit the chamber together, moving slowly through the cavern as Noah regains his footing, stopping to face him. Orlai admits that she can no longer ignore the mystery surrounding his powers. Acknowledging that Noah has saved her life multiple times, she explains her reluctance to pry until now. Noah listens intently as she prepares to confront him about his true nature and origins. Pointing to his aura, Orlai reveals she senses 3 distinct mana types leaking from his core. She notes that his power is far beyond the norm, suggesting his abilities are unnaturally potent, pointing out his veteran-level combat instincts. She questions how he fights with such lethal efficiency, mentioning his strange connection to the cult. She expresses concern over his willingness to stay and fight. She brings up his decision to protect her even when the situation turned dire. Noah shrugs it off, explaining his background in various martial arts back in his own world. He admits he kept his secrets to survive in a hostile land where everyone wanted him dead. Orlai nods in understanding, finally grasping why he had to keep his guard up. Extending his hand, Noah initiates a gesture of mutual trust to bridge the gap between them. Orlai flares her own energy in a show of force, warning that she will not be toyed with. Demanding to know if their partnership is genuine, she stares him down to gauge his sincerity. She produces an unknown ring and commands Noah to inspect its properties for the truth. Noah focuses his mana on the artifact, but initially sees nothing behind the hidden seal. The system identifies the item as a legendary second chance ring, revealing its power to restore health. Noah confirms he kept his guard up to protect himself, and Orlai agrees their trust test is passed. She presses him on his void creature control and that mysterious letter with its abnormally pure mana. The suspicion remains that he somehow bypassed her sensing abilities during their first encounter. Noah laughs off the idea of a lie-detecting skill, claiming he has no such trick up his sleeve. Handing over a small stone, he instructs her to press it against her heart while channeling her mana. Orlai demands the absolute truth about his identity once the connection is established. Noah explains he lacks memories of his own death and feels like parts of his mind are missing. He clarifies that commanding void creatures is a side effect of waking up in the void after dying, insisting he is not some world-ending lunatic. He swears he is just a man lost in an unfamiliar place. Orlai commands him to recite a formal oath of honesty while clutching the stone. Noah repeats the vow, swearing on his astral soul that his words are entirely truthful. The system confirms his honesty with a chime, marking his declaration as a valid oath. A sudden, brilliant light erupts from the stone as the system validates his integrity. The stone remains perfectly intact, proving his sincerity to Orlai, who pledges her life to his cause. Noah explains that a lie would have caused the stone to crack under his wavering mana. The stone glows with an intense light, symbolizing the confirmation of his words. Finally clearing the air, Noah pulls his thoughts together and relaxes his stance. They head outside together into the bright open air, moving past the local buildings. Noah enters a quiet house, eager to start learning about this world and its technology. He settles in to study books on prosthetic arms, desperate to understand his new environment. Noah studies the anatomy of void parasites, noting how these slimy, worm-like organisms burrow into a host's spine. These creatures can turn a living being into a mindless monster or, in rare cases, create a symbiotic bond. He realizes that by harnessing this parasite, he might actually find a way to reattach his own severed arm. The research suggests that controlling a dying limb through such a graft is theoretically possible. Closing the book, Noah decides to investigate summoning chains to call a void creature for his experiment. These entities require a steady supply of life force to feed on. But Noah knows his own reserves are more than sufficient. He discovers that ancient cults used human sacrifices to bind these familiars, a brutal practice he intends to bypass entirely, relying on his advanced knowledge. He prepares to use his summoning abilities to achieve the same result without the bloodshed. Armed with a rare skill book for the Abyssal Call ritual, Noah feels confident he can finally restore his missing limb. He packs his gear and heads out into the night, moving with a clear purpose toward a secluded area, finding a quiet, dark spot away from prying eyes. He prepares to initiate the forbidden summoning. Tapping the system interface to consume the rare skill book, he accepts the prompt to learn. The ritual energy swirls around the tome as the knowledge floods his mind, unlocking the Abyssal Call skill instantly thanks to his high proficiency. The system grants him a significant head start, beginning the skill at level 29. Noah crushes a catalyst stone to fuel the magic, feeling the raw power hum through his fingertips as the ritual begins. Orlai arrives at the site just as the dark energy flares, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. They exchange a brief nod, confirming the plan is in motion as the magical pressure continues to build. The book begins to spin in the air, glowing with an ominous violet light as the incantation reaches its peak. Complex arcane runes etch themselves into the ground around him, creating a massive circle to contain the void entity. As the final surge of power stabilizes, a prompt for an epic tier tome appears, forcing Noah to decide his next move. Noah accepts the epic tier tome, initiating the summoning of an abyssal parasite to serve his dark design. Reality tears open to reveal the void, where swarms of parasitic entities drift through the endless dark. One massive parasite emerges from the rift, its multiple eyes locking onto the ritual site with predatory intent. The system echoes with a command of eternal hunger, binding the entity to Noah's will. Through the blood pact, a torrent of dark energy flows into the parasite, forcing the creature to recognize Noah as its true master. The entity accepts the bargain, its hunger momentarily sated by the connection to his life force. Lunging forward with unnatural speed, The parasite attempts to overwhelm the boundaries of the summoning circle. Multiple entities clash in the void as the ritual reaches critical instability. Testing the strength of the containment, the parasite revels in the raw sensation of being summoned. Its consciousness merging with the dark energy, driven by an insatiable need to consume, the entity lashes out at the surrounding magical barriers. Narrow misses and rapid movements define the chaos. As the creature dodges, the containment pulses. Violent impact shakes the ritual ground, demonstrating the sheer destructive potential of the summoned parasite. The entity strikes repeatedly against the magical seals, ringing out like metal on metal as it tests the limit. The system intervenes with urgent warnings, demanding the parasite prioritize obedience and avoid total destruction of the area. Forced to comply by the master-servant bond, the parasite halts its assault and turns toward Noah. The creature acknowledges his authority, signaling its readiness to follow his commands from this point forward. Noah asserts his dominance by directing the entity back into the darkness, tethering its power to his own. Dark tendrils wrap around his arm as the parasite integrates with his body, beginning the process of restoration. He endures the agonizing surge of the ritual, watching as the void-grafted flesh begins to take shape. The system confirms the successful graft while triggering a fever status, marking a significant evolution in his physical form. Aurelia urges Noah to desummon the parasite before it consumes his sanity. Gasping for air while fighting to stay conscious, Noah insists he can handle the strain. A sharp jolt of agony drops him to the floor. Watching the void graft spread across his arm, Aurelia warns him that he looks on the verge of collapse. The system chimes to announce the acquisition of the pain tolerance skill. Searing heat radiates from the grafted limb, forcing Noah to strip off his shirt to mitigate the burn. Dark energy surges through his veins as the fever escalates to level 2. Clutching his arm while trying to rationalize the parasite's aggressive healing, Noah tells Aurelia he has it under control. Desperate for relief, he reaches for health potions to stabilize his fluctuating life force. Focusing on his breathing to ignore the agonizing sensation, he levels up pain tolerance to level 2. Meditation and pain management skills climb simultaneously, pushing his body to endure the overwhelming void energy. Deep rhythmic breathing becomes his only anchor against the encroaching corruption. Constant focus on his internal mana flow drives both skills to level 5. Noticing that his arm has gone completely numb, he wonders aloud about the status of his graft. The system notification clears the fever status from his body. Aurelia hands him a restorative tonic to help him recover from the ordeal, gulping down the potion in a single go. He starts to feel a sense of stability returning. Checking his arm, he confirms to Aurelia that the sharp pain has finally vanished. The grafted limb twitches uncontrollably, causing Aurelia to worry that the integration is still unstable. Void matter begins to reshape and squelch into a new form, signaling that the parasite is still evolving. The parasite develops poison glands and reinforced muscle fiber, leaving Noah impressed by the sudden upgrade. System messages confirm the abyssal parasite has hit level 6, triggering a race evolution that boosts all his attributes. A new skill window defines the abyssal symbiote, revealing the creature now feeds on his life force to serve his commands. Aurelia admits she was not sure if the procedure would actually succeed. Despite all the research she put into removing the parasite, testing his new mobility, Noah swings the mutated arm with incredible speed and fluidity. Razor-sharp claws extend from the fingertips, proving the limb is ready for combat. Grinning at the lethal potential, Noah decides the risk was completely worth the outcome. Aurelia suggests keeping the limb covered to avoid unwanted attention from other adventurers. Noting that while monster part grafts are rare, this level of total integration is unheard of. Even as she acknowledges how sick and impressive the transformation is, Aurelia can't hide her discomfort at the sight. Laughing off her reaction, Noah jokes about his homeworld slang. The claws retract and extend at his command. Though he recognizes he still needs practice to master the mechanism, curiosity getting the better of her, Aurelia asks if she can get a closer look at the graft. She carefully presses her fingers against the dark, hardened scales. The limb reacts instantly to her touch, snapping the claws shut in a defensive reflex. Acknowledging that such an obvious weapon could be a tactical liability, Noah plans to find equipment that can conceal it. Aurelia explains that since the graft is now linked to his astral script, it will continue to evolve as he grows stronger. Excited to put his new gear to the test, Noah agrees that they should leave their current hideout immediately. The pair starts their journey through the forest, leaving the site of the experiment behind them. Moving quickly through the trees, they head toward the edge of the woods to find a safer place to train. Selecting a sturdy tree as his first target, Noah finds the perfect spot to start training. Extending his newly integrated limb, he prepares to unleash the parasite's power on the wood. Channeling his energy, Noah launches a strike with the dark, clawed appendage. The impact tears through the bark as his claws shred the trunk, shredding the tree with a series of clean, rapid slashes. Noah watches the wood disintegrate. Deep gouges mark the tree as the parasitic energy continues to bite into the timber. Deciding to experiment further, he coats the limb in a viscous purple toxin before striking again. Watching the tree rapidly wither from the corrosive poison, Noah grins at the destructive potential. Seeing the trunk buckle under the combined force and toxicity, Aurelia cannot help but be impressed. She warns him that his lack of control over the left arm could turn into a major liability. Nodding in agreement, Noah taps the clawed hand to demonstrate he's already working on his coordination, clicking the mechanism in and out. He admits that the sheer novelty of the limb makes him grin, puzzled by his enthusiasm. Aurelia questions why he finds such a monstrous transformation so appealing. Explaining the cultural influence of his home world, Noah tells her that people would actually pay for such power. Confused by his casual attitude toward a potentially dangerous graft, Orlia struggles to follow his logic. Laughing off her concern, Noah jokes about his perspective on conflict and peace. Finding his world bizarre, Orlia points out that his concepts of dragons and conflict are totally alien, tossing a stone to emphasize his point. Noah claims that even a dragon would feel normal back home. Questioning the reality of his claims, Orlia remains skeptical of his strange background. Dismissing the debate, Noah leaps back into action to continue testing the limits of his new strength. Swinging the clawed limb with reckless abandon, Noah sends a massive boulder flying into pieces. The sudden physical strain makes his hand throb with a dull, persistent pain. Sensing the void energy within him activating, he watches as the limb pulses with raw, dark power. Realizing the graft is far more volatile than he anticipated, Noah decides he needs to handle it with extreme caution. Cracking his knuckles, he forces the limb to settle as the energy begins to stabilize. Another powerful strike tears through the air, testing the absolute limit of his current reach, shattering the remaining rock into dust. He celebrates his destructive success like a kid in a candy store, urging him to return before they are missed. Orlia tries to drag Noah away from his testing ground. Grumbling about her being a total killjoy, he eventually follows her lead back toward civilization, catching him giggling to himself. Orli turns around and demands to know what he finds so amusing. Confessing that he was just admiring his new arm, Noah cannot help but chuckle at his own reflection, slapping his shoulder in annoyance. Orli tries to keep his ego in check while he continues to laugh. A sudden blast of fire erupts out of nowhere, signaling an unexpected arrival in the middle of their path. Blinking in surprise at the incoming projectile, Noah narrowly avoids the heat of the mysterious spell. Shouting his frustration at the unseen attacker, he starts running to see who is behind the ambush. Wandering back into town together, they shift the conversation toward his new prosthetic, entering a local tavern to grab a drink. Noah listens as a villager comments on the rumors of magical limbs. Sipping his ale, he deflects the man's questions about where he acquired such a strange, dark graft. Nodding along to the local gossip, Noah keeps his true origins hidden behind a friendly, polite smile. Walking away from the tavern, he notices some kids whispering about the monster he supposedly consumed to get his arm. A woman warns the local children that if they do not behave, Noah will come back to eat them. Hearing his reputation, Noah decides to lean into the rumors by putting on a quick, sinister act. Jumping out with a mock roar, he sends the kids and their caretaker screaming in terror. Laughing off the prank, Noah sits back down in the tavern to enjoy his drink with a local man. The villager questions how long he plans to stay, but Noah explains that Orlia is busy charting their next route. Downing a mug of ale, Noah remarks that the drink is much better than the alternative of losing his arm. Setting the empty mug down, he agrees that living is better than ending up dead in some remote corner. Leaning in, Noah asks the man if he would be willing to do him a small favor. Sliding a list of mysterious materials across the table, he assures the panicked villager that he is not summoning any demons. The man agrees to hunt down the rare components, though he notes it will cost extra to get them today. Handing over a glowing mana stone, Noah offers payment to cover the man's expenses for the job. Seeing the sheer value of the gems, the villager can only shake his head at how unpredictable adventurers are, promising to have everything gathered by sunset. The man takes the payment and heads out to start the search. Strolling back through the village streets, Noah heads toward their temporary base to meet up with Orlia. Catching sight of a cart being pushed along the path, he makes his way toward the building. Meeting Orlia, he hands over the documents he retrieved and thanks her for her hard work. Moving into their room, Noah sets the books down as Orlia looks up from her own research. Ignoring her exasperated reaction to his earlier jokes, he turns his focus to the cage sitting in the corner. Orlia asks what exactly he plans to do with the white rabbit currently trapped inside the wooden enclosure. Smiling at her curiosity, Noah explains that he intends to use the animal to finally test his new abilities. With the inventory interface cleared, Noah pulls up his menu to begin his experiments. The test subject, a trembling rabbit, crouches inside its cage as he prepares the first trial. Tossing a handful of pebbles into the enclosure, he readies his void-grafted arm for the activation. Flicking his wrist with precision, Noah sends the stones flying toward the target. The pebbles vanish instantly, reappearing inside the cage right next to the rabbit. Confirming that teleporting objects is possible, he turns to a stunned Orlia to share his findings. Shifting gears to test his limits, he grabs a larger scoop of stones from the bucket. Orlia questions his chaotic methods, but he just grins while focusing on his next target. Locking his concentration on the goal, Noah prepares to push his mana capacity even further. Power flares through his arm as he attempts to jump his own body forward. The sudden displacement catches him off guard, causing him to stumble while Orlia watches in disbelief. Checking the inventory board again, he notes the strain of carrying extra items during the jump. Realizing that internal weight significantly complicates the ability, he starts refining his approach. Surging with energy once more, Noah activates the blink ability for another high-speed movement. He hits the ground with a heavy thud, confirming that current gear does not interfere with the teleportation. Grabbing a long metal staff, he prepares to see if the ability can move larger equipment. A flash of light signals the activation, but the results are far from what he expected. Colliding hard with the furniture, Noah crashes into the shelves while Orlia barely dodges the chaos. The staff clatters to the floor as he recovers from the failed teleport. Watching the scene unfold from her book, Orlia realizes he's going to keep testing until he breaks something. Noah centers himself again, determined to figure out why the staff did not follow him. Mana pulses through his body in a rhythmic glow, but the light fades and he realizes the staff is still sitting exactly where he left it. Testing his reach again, he confirms the ability only works on items he is actively gripping, tossing a handful of random objects around the room. He starts to get a feel for the activation, humming to himself while he experiments. Noah picks up a small stone to test his limits, gripping the pebble tightly in his palm. He waits for the energy to stabilize. A quick jump shifts his position across the room, leaving the floor scuffed in his wake. Explaining his findings to Orlia, he notes that he cannot blink to a location he is not touching. Attempting to teleport the entire building fails, forcing him to accept the hard limit of his power. Orlia pieces together the logic. Realizing the mana needs a direct conduit to function, she suggests that the restriction is likely hard-coded into the astral scripts themselves. Catching a glimpse of a nearby rabbit, Noah wonders if the rules apply to living creatures too. Gritting his teeth with a manic grin, he decides it is time to push the theory, grabbing the startled rabbit. He hopes the little guy can handle a sudden jump through space. Energy hums around them as he initiates the blink with the animal held close, arriving safely at the other side of the room. He celebrates the successful transport of a living being, moving on to his next idea. He grabs a handful of glowing green vines for a tougher test. Tension spikes as the mana hits resistance, straining against the weight of the new object. With a final burst of light, Noah forces the jump and vanishes into thin air. Recovering his breath, Noah monitors his mana levels as they hit a full recharge. Proposing a new experiment, he asks Orlia if she is ready to be his next test subject. Initial attempts to move her fail, leading them to question if the system classifies her as held cargo. Grasping her hand to force the connection, Noah triggers his ability and pulls them both into a blink. System alerts flash across his vision, confirming a level up for his skill while warning him of his critically low mana. The disorientation leaves Orlia reeling, her body struggling to process the sudden spatial shift. Catching his balance, Noah admits he is running on empty, agreeing that the experience was brutal for them both, complaining of a splitting headache. Orlia calls for a mandatory break to let their systems stabilize. Physical strain hits Noah hard, causing him to double over as his body rejects the intense mana usage. Once the nausea subsides, he stands back up to regroup with Orlia. Summarizing the results, Noah notes that while he can transport living beings, the cost of moving heavy people is physically devastating. Shaking off the exhaustion, he shifts his focus to the next phase of his training, reaching for a container of small stones. He prepares to test if he can move multiple items at once. System notifications chime rapidly, tracking each pebble as it is successfully registered into his inventory. Deciding to increase the difficulty, he piles the stones together to see if mass quantity affects his drain, directing his mana toward the cluster. He initiates the transfer to move the entire pile. Momentum carries the pebbles forward as he pushes them into the interface. Surprise registers on his face when the inventory draw consumes more mana than he anticipated. Counting the final tally, he records the successful acquisition of 48 pebbles before moving on. Apologizing to the rabbit for the trouble, he initiates one final test to confirm his findings. Waiting for the cooldown to reset, Noah checks his status. While the clock ticks down the final seconds for his next attempt, Noah studies the rabbit, wondering if time actually freezes inside his inventory space, and he suggests to Orlia that she should be his next test subject. Explaining his plan to store people-like items since the rabbit survived the trip just fine, Orlia flatly refuses the proposition, shaking her head at his reckless logic, but Noah persists with his dramatic pitch, even as she clearly loses her patience, telling him to quit the nonsense before she reaches her limit. And she finally admits that she is terrified of the pitch-black void inside his storage, so Noah teases her for being afraid of the dark despite wielding fire powers. Quickly backing down when he realizes he has pushed her too far, Orlia points out that his theory about time stopping remains completely unproven. Noah explains that he only wants to save her life in an emergency, and she relents, acknowledging that she needs to understand how his dangerous powers actually function. Confirming her agreement with a firm nod, she demands that he pull her out immediately if things go wrong. Noah summons the interface again to initiate the high-stakes experiment, and he reaches out to grab Orlia for the transfer, pulling her toward the inventory window as the space begins to warp around them. Until a system alert flashes, signaling that the capacity has been exceeded, the failed experiment drains a massive amount of Noah's mana. But he realizes the system at least recognized the command. Orlia expresses relief that they might not actually need to use such a risky feature, and she settles back down to study her notes while Noah prepares the next phase of his testing. Noah activates his void ability to see how it interacts with small objects, timing how quickly the dark energy consumes items in each hand. He analyzes the data streaming across his interface to gauge the efficiency. Watching closely as the void energy envelops the target, Noah tosses the test item into the energy field with a sharp flick. Where the dark power shreds the object into nothingness instantly, he reaches out to stabilize the lingering energy, questioning whether his abilities possess a fixed cost for every activation. While Orlia suggests that partial activations might allow him to bypass those minimum requirements, Noah considers her insight and pulls the white rabbit toward his inventory window, testing if the creature stays frozen in time within that pocket dimension. He gently sets the rabbit down to see if it remains unaffected. The creature hops across the floor toward Orlia, and she scoops the rabbit up in her arms, delighted by its presence. Noticing how the animal instinctively seeks out her warmth, Noah realizes he can manipulate the storage field and readies another attempt to tuck the rabbit away. Noah decides he needs to test if his blood can heal others, pulling out a blade while reassuring Orlia he has a potion ready just in case. He approaches the rabbit to begin the experiment, offering a quick apology before bringing the knife down. The blade cuts into the rabbit, leaving Orlai to hold it steady as it squeals. Noah wipes his own blood onto the rabbit's wound, and the creature immediately begins to heal as the blood drips onto its skin. Orlai watches in disbelief while Noah tracks the rapid recovery. The rabbit suddenly stops struggling and starts drooling with anticipation. Licking the blood directly off Noah's glove with frantic intensity, Orlai warns Noah to keep this ability hidden from everyone, explaining that he would become a human blood farm if anyone found out. Noah agrees to keep quiet and sets the rabbit down, but the creature clearly wants more of his blood. So Orlai decides it is time to release the rabbit back into the wild, setting it down in the woods where it immediately starts foraging, though it quickly grows frustrated with standard grass. Eating with a visible scowl as it misses the taste of his blood, the rabbit suddenly bolts away into the trees, fixated on finding more of that strange, addictive red drink. The rabbit hops through the forest, dreaming of that sweet red drink, pushing itself harder as the scent of the giant lingers in its mind, and it spots another human in the distance, pausing to take a good look at this potential new target, while the girl sits peacefully among the flowers. Drawing the rabbit closer with every hop, then she hears a rustle in the grass and turns to look, spotting the small animal and immediately breaking into a smile. She welcomes the bunny with open arms, offering it a leaf to see if it wants a snack, and the rabbit eats the greenery with a show of fake enthusiasm while the girl pets its fur, completely charmed by how cute it seems. But the rabbit is only thinking about the blood it craves, so it starts clawing at her clothes to get closer. And the girl thinks it just wants to be held, scooping the creature up into a hug, though she wonders if her parents will let her keep it. Yet she keeps poking its nose, oblivious to the creature's true intentions, before heading down the path toward the village with the rabbit in her arms, while the beast silently plots how to get its next fix from this new giant. Ori bursts through the front door, shouting for her mother. While the rabbit hunkers down in her arms, already annoyed by the noise level, and her mother walks out to investigate, immediately spotting the unwanted stowaway, so Ori begs to keep her new friend while the beast calculates which giant offers the best blood, but her mother shuts the request down, citing the chaos caused by Ori's brother. However, the rabbit does not care about the family drama, only waiting for its chance to strike. And Ori refuses to listen, pleading for her mom to reconsider the adoption, yet her mother firmly insists that wild animals do not belong inside. So the rabbit keeps up the act, squealing on cue to manipulate the situation, while the mother tries to rationalize that it must be someone else's lost pet. Then Ori chases her mother through the house, throwing a tantrum over the denial, and the mother finally tosses the rabbit out the door, ending the argument. So the creature hits the ground and immediately starts clawing the floor in frustration, while the door slams shut in its face, cutting off access to the target. Then the beast realizes the girl played it for a fool, and it decides to ditch the house to track down a more gullible host, hopping out onto the village path to scan the crowd for a new victim, while some villagers chatter nearby, completely unaware of the predator in their midst. Then the rabbit approaches a couple of men standing on the street, and they stop to inspect the animal, wondering why it is wandering alone. The villager reaches out to pet the rabbit, but the creature snaps his finger with a brutal bite. Blood sprays as the man collapses in shock, and his companion scrambles back in pure terror. Meanwhile, Orlai walks toward the cabin where Noah is currently training. She steps inside and finds him buried in his status screens. Noah asks for advice on hiding his notifications to keep his focus clear during combat. Orlai explains that most adventurers just filter their alerts into a separate storage box. Noah follows her lead, tapping the interface to bundle his incoming messages together. He swipes the notifications away with ease, finally clearing his view. Curiosity takes over as he tries to decipher how his specific attributes actually function. Noah stares deep into the blue light, forcing his mind to bridge the gap between stats and reality. Pain radiates through his skull as he pushes his mental limits to breaking point. The system suddenly pings, granting him the rare soul modification skill as his stats cascade across the screen. Orlai watches from the side, noting that the guild usually evaluates these sub-attributes during registration. A massive wave of information floods his brain. And Noah grips his head as his vision begins to swim. He tries to parse the incoming data, but the sheer pressure of the system starts to crush his senses. Notifications ping repeatedly, signaling that his soul resistance and modification levels are skyrocketing. A detailed schematic of his own anatomy appears on the display, showing the core of his power. He gasps for air, caught off guard by the intensity of the forced evolution. Exhaustion slams into him as the process demands every ounce of his remaining willpower. Back in the village, the blood-stained rabbit lunges at the panicked men, leaving them screaming for help. The village men stand their ground, watching the bloodied rabbit retreat into the shadows. It realizes the red drink it consumed earlier was a counterfeit, lacking the power of the giant's elixir, questioning why the effects have faded so quickly. The creature pauses to analyze the strange sensation. Realization hits that its newfound strength is slipping away, sending it into a frantic state of denial. Desperate for another hit of the substance, it scrambles to recall where more could be hidden. Dizziness clouds its vision as the withdrawal sets in, forcing the beast to hatch a new plan. Predatory instincts kick in, suggesting that consuming life force directly from other creatures might work. Vicious images of tearing into prey flash through its mind as it hunts for a replacement source. Deciding that any living thing with fur is fair game, it darts away from the village. Minutes pass in the quiet forest until the underbrush begins to rustle with movement. An unsuspecting squirrel emerges from the grass, unaware that it has become the primary target. Moving with lethal intent, the rabbit spots the small creature and closes the distance. Hunger drives the beast to stalk its prey with calculated, predatory precision. It lunges forward in a sudden blur of motion, determined to secure its next meal. Midair, the rabbit miscalculates, narrowly missing the agile squirrel as it leaps for safety. Terror spikes in the smaller creature as it realizes it is being hunted through the trees. High-speed pursuit continues across the forest floor. With the rabbit skidding as it tries to keep pace, the squirrel finds an opening and scrambles up a thick trunk, putting distance between itself and the attacker. Frustrated by the failed hunt and the loss of its target, the rabbit hits the ground hard. Settling for a simpler meal, it begins to munch on some nearby forest berries to stave off the hunger. The rabbit spots a wild boar wandering nearby, and it immediately decides to pivot targets, charging forward with renewed aggression. The beast launches itself directly at the massive animal, sinking its teeth deep into the boar's leg, but the target retaliates with a fierce, guttural growl, catching the rabbit with a powerful kick that sends it flying backward through the air. Realizing it picked the wrong fight, the rabbit trembles as it retreats, nursing its fresh wounds, retreating into the safety of the brush. The creature leaves a trail of blood behind, staring at its own injuries. It pauses to let the immediate pain subside before planning its next move. Catching the scent of something new, the rabbit pivots its head, eyes widening at a different potential prey bolting through the forest floor. It closes the distance with terrifying, calculated speed. Finding another rabbit distracted while eating, it observes from the shadows with cold, predatory intent. Sensing a fellow creature as a source of energy, the beast justifies the coming hunt as an act of survival, closing the gap with a single leap. It descends upon the unsuspecting target, sniffing out the newcomer. The target turns in confusion, unaware that it is already being sized up, pressing close to verify its meal. The aggressor moves in with unsettling familiarity. Spotting the danger, the target tries to bolt, but the trap is already closing shut, revealing its true violent nature. The rabbit lets out a sharp, menacing hiss, launching a final, decisive strike. It forces the panicked target into a corner, unleashing a flurry of blows. The predator overwhelms its prey within a cloud of dust and violence. Standing over the fallen creature, the victor breathes heavily, drained but finally satisfied. Looking down at the kill with a dark, hungry resolve, the rabbit prepares to feast on its prize. The system confirms the kill and drops a notification, offering the rabbit a chance to evolve into a murder bunny. Meanwhile, Noah finally wakes up as he and Orlia step into a room overflowing with scattered documents. Apologizing for the absolute disaster of a desk, Orlia tries to clear some space, noting how much planning Noah has been doing. She questions him about his complex, multi-layered goals. Mapping out their journey, Orlia points to potential betrayal zones on the path toward Windrest. Admitting he needs clarity on his own body's mysterious sub-attributes, Noah pushes for a deeper explanation, pulling up his internal diagnostics. He highlights the strange data on his ranks and hidden potential, agreeing that it is time for serious talk. Orlia encourages Noah to embrace his path as a true adventurer, nodding along with eager determination. He commits to learning whatever he needs to get stronger. Sitting down together, they start organizing the notes while the room settles into a productive rhythm. Sketching out a quick diagram, Orlia prepares to explain the nature of his internal energy, showing him a crude stick figure drawing. She identifies the oversized aura representing his massive soul, explaining that his soul's capacity is naturally larger than his physical form. She clarifies why he struggles to contain his power. Pointing out that his body acts as a literal cage for his overflowing potential, she highlights why he cannot yet tap into his full strength. Describing how training sub-attributes expands his vessel, she illustrates how he can make more room for that energy to settle. Detailing the mechanics of power, she notes that maximizing primary attributes can make him stronger than even a higher-ranked fighter. Processing the information, Noah listens as she warns him not to obsess over those sub-attributes just yet. Leaving the official sub-attribute testing to the guild's experts, Orlia suggests they shift their focus. Deciding it is finally time to hit the road, she signals that they have overstayed their welcome. Arriving at the town gates an hour later, they bid farewell to their hosts before riding off toward their next destination. The mayor offers a polite farewell to the pair, wishing them well on their long journey ahead. Waving back, Noah and Orlia trot away from the town, finally putting the settlement behind them. A system notification chimes with a new quest to safely reach the City of Winds. Growing impatient, Noah asks how much longer the trip will take, but Orlia shuts him down. Complaining about his exhaustion, he pleads for a break. Though Orlia insists they must keep moving, noticing the sudden spike in temperature, he asks why it is so hot, and she explains the sun's cycle every 15 days, staring up at the harsh glare. He wishes he had some cooling abilities to handle the sweltering heat, suggesting he focus on building heat resistance. She keeps riding while he struggles to keep his cool, remarking on the drastic change from the previous forest. He notes how quickly the landscape has turned into an arid wasteland. Clarifying the mechanics, she explains that the environment shifts based on the local mana type and grade. Looking over the dry, barren plains, Noah wonders what kind of conditions await them at Windrest, describing the city's namesake. She confirms that the region is entirely dependent on powerful wind currents. Laughing at his desperate hope for a cooler climate, she finds his reaction genuinely amusing, telling him he will adjust eventually. She promises they can take a short break to hydrate soon. Pulling a canteen from his pack, Noah takes a quick drink to soothe his parched throat, suddenly spotting something in the distance. He stops mid-gulp to get a better look, squinting at a figure on the horizon. He senses trouble and urges Orlia to pick up the pace. Snapping the reins, she kicks her horse into a gallop to cover the remaining distance, racing across the dusty plains. The duo pushes their mounts to reach the mysterious travelers. Catching up to the caravan, they finally identify the group as a merchant party guarded by Korok's warriors. Approaching the caravan, Noah and Orlia greet the lead merchant, who assumes they are reinforcements sent by the guild. admitting they are just independent travelers. They explain they are not affiliated with any organization, mentioning a massive landslide has completely blocked their primary path. The merchant explains that geomancers are needed to clear the debris, pointing toward the absolute mess of rock ahead. The merchant confirms that there is simply no way forward. Studying the map for alternatives, Orlaya considers taking the much shorter, albeit significantly more dangerous, route through Serpent's Grove, warning against the idea. The merchant panics at the very mention of the name, citing local legends about a terrifying worm lurking in that exact location. He insists the path is a death trap, laughing off his superstition. Orlaya dismisses the rumors, arguing that the mana levels are too low to support such a creature. Noting the merchant's sheer terror at the prospect of the grove, she realizes he would rather wait days than step foot near it. Just as the conversation stalls, a stranger rushes toward them from the roadside, falling to his knees. The man begs for their help, his voice shaking with desperation. Introducing himself as Leon, a sculptor working for the mayor, he explains his family is in dire straits. Revealing his young son is suffering from a mysterious and severe illness, Leon pleads for them to escort his family through the grove, promising a generous reward for their protection. He insists that reaching Windrest is their only hope for a cure. Glancing at the sickly child in his wife's arms, Noah senses the gravity of the situation, realizing the family has already been turned away by multiple local healers. Orlaya weighs the risks of their request, confirming the child's condition is beyond the reach of standard C-rank medical aid. The parents look to the duo for a miracle, noticing the severe lack of available high-level help in the area. Noah sees why the family is so frantic, agreeing to take on the escort. He decides to guide them through the dangerous grove. Setting out with the desperate family in tow, the party prepares to face whatever actually lives in the forest. Noah leans down to examine the boy, confirming the dire state of his health, noting the child is burning up with a fever. Orlaya watches as Noah checks for a pulse, pulling Noah aside for a quick strategy talk. Orlaya makes sure the parents cannot overhear their concerns. Looking back at the stranded family, she questions if they should really just leave them out in the open. Acknowledging that Leifar village is closer, she reminds Noah that the kid needs a high-level healer, suggesting he use his own blood to stabilize the boy. Noah gets an immediate warning from Orlaya about keeping his powers secret, resolving to push forward to Windrest. They finalize the plan to get the family moving. Calling out their decision, Noah commits to escorting the group to the city. Hearing the good news, Leon breaks down in relief as a new quest notification pops up for the party. Rushing to gather his family, Leon signals for his wife Shea to get moving, clutching their son Urios. Shea follows Leon as they prepare to head into the grove. Holding out a vial, Noah signals Leon to bring the child closer for a dose of medicine. Leon accepts the mysterious red liquid with sincere gratitude, warning Noah to keep his secret blood magic hidden. Orlaya keeps a sharp watch on the parents. Drawing a small blade across his palm, Noah lets his own vital energy drip into the waiting vial, mixing the potent blood into the base potion. He gives the container a quick shake, approaching the shivering child. Shea gently holds Urios as Noah prepares the treatment, seeing the intense red color of the tonic. The boy reacts to the strange-smelling remedy, offering a reassuring smile. Noah promises the boy that a small sip will help him feel better on the road. As the child takes the medicine, the group prepares to step into the dangerous woods. Urios downs the potent tonic in one go, swallowing the blood-infused mixture with noticeable effort, and he lets out a long, shaky breath once the glass is empty, before promptly falling into a deep, quiet sleep in his mother's arms. Urging the group to move fast, Noah mounts up and kicks his horse into gear, leading the party deeper into the thick forest as they aim for Windrest. Leon confirms they can reach the town by sunrise if they ride through the night, so the small caravan presses onward under the canopy. Noah strikes up a conversation with Leon about his origins in Altius, and Leon admits he's a sculptor who works with enchanted materials, demonstrating his craft by bringing a small wooden bear to life, explaining that his creations are used by the mayor for town defense, while clarifying that the constructs follow simple commands rather than acting on their own. Orlaya shifts the topic to their destination, where a high-ranked healer waits for the boy. Noting that they are lucky to have secured such a skilled professional for Urios, Leon mentions the group is called Righteous Light, dodging the earlier confusion about their name, expressing his deep gratitude for the help after weeks of helplessness. Leon grips his reins while mentioning that a mysterious sickness is spreading through his village. Noah narrows his eyes at the news that the plague is affecting both kids and the elderly, as Leon's wife Shea reveals that every recent birth in their town has resulted in a stillbirth. Noah processes the news that abyssal cultists are tracking them, and Orlaya notes the disturbing involvement of the Hellions Church in this mess. Shea insists they cannot just abandon their town despite the mayor's questionable past, so the group keeps riding deeper into the dense forest. Until an eerie, unnatural glow starts pulsing through the trees, prompting Noah to activate his Void Hunter's eyes to pierce the midday darkness. Then a sharp metallic click echoes nearby as the air begins to shift, forcing the horses to stop while a strange, heavy pressure settles over the party, and Leon yells out in alarm as something unseen lurks in the brush, which convinces Noah to steer them off the main path immediately. Then an interface window flickers to life, revealing an undead bear in their proximity, and the massive creature looms over them, forcing the horses to halt in their tracks. Orlaya asks if such monsters are common here, but Noah senses something is deeply wrong, so she leaps from her mount to investigate the immediate perimeter, landing gracefully on a branch before dropping down to scout the shadows, while Noah urges the group to stay mobile and keep moving forward. Then a massive red aura of doom suddenly flares up in his vision, and a powerful entity hits the forest floor with a deafening thud. Orlia realizes their worst fears have materialized and orders everyone to retreat, so the horses scramble to flee the encroaching threat in the thick woods. Orlia preps her gear mid-stride as they abandon the campsite, while the horses gallop frantically into the darkening forest to escape, and Noah leads the group in a desperate dash toward temporary safety. Questioning the sudden darkness that has descended upon the woods, so Orlia shields the infant Erios from the unnatural chill spreading around them. Then Noah glimpses the sky to realize an eclipse is blocking out the sun, which prompts Orlia to physically strike him to stop him from staring into the void. Explaining that cosmic alignments like this turn day into a nightmarish hunting ground. Meanwhile, the system prompts the rabbit to undergo a dark evolution into a murder bunny. Because the celestial event known as the Watcher's Gaze is now active, and the small creature undergoes a violent transformation fueled by the eclipse's energy, since the Watcher's presence manifests as a literal eye in the sky above them, which descends upon the forest to inflict madness on any living thing, and the system confirms Noah is now suffering from a severe madness status effect, while Orlia grips his hand to anchor him before his mind completely fractures. Demanding they secure a shelter immediately to survive the incoming wave of undead, so Noah shakes off the worst of the mental toll, signaling they have a brief window, and the rest of the party looks on in terror as the shadows deepen, because glowing red eyes are already beginning to swarm through the dense thicket. Then the Watcher's eye fully opens to judge their souls as the onslaught begins. Noah and Orlia rush through the dark forest, dodging shadows that seem to pulse with the eclipse. And a system window flashes before Noah, confirming the Watcher's night has officially begun, so he checks with Orlia to see if she is experiencing the same reality-bending hallucinations. Realizing the celestial eye is actively compelling anyone who sees it to stare into its gaze, which forces Noah to physically fight his own impulses to keep from being enthralled by the phenomenon, while Orlia notices the sudden shift in the environment and demands to know what is happening. Leading her to ignite her flames to defend the party as the undead threat closes in, and she unleashes a torrent of fire, turning the immediate area into a defensive perimeter, striking an encroaching undead bear that lunges out of the gloom with supernatural ferocity, as she maintains the barrage of flame, forcing the beast back before it can reach them. But Noah realizes the danger is escalating and pulls Orlia toward a safer path, drawing his blade to carve a way through the closing circle of enemies, and the system updates his quest to a very hard escort mission, demanding they reach Windrest just as a massive serpent strikes from the brush, forcing Noah to react instantly, so he swings his weapon with precision, severing the monster before it can coil around them, while Orlia continues to hold off the bear, her fire acting as a barrier against the horde. Despite their efforts, more undead figures emerge from the shadows, stalking them with relentless intent, and one of the creatures grabs a nearby straggler, pulling them into the darkness, as the victim screams for help, forcing the group to decide whether to risk their lives, so Noah and Orlia focus on shielding the family, desperately pushing forward to clear the grove. Noah cuts through the encroaching horde to create an opening for the survivors. And he follows up with a clean slash that dispatches another lesser undead, pinning the final threat to the ground until the system confirms his victory. Then he turns to steady the civilians, helping the injured woman back onto her feet, who confesses that a sharp pain in her ankle is slowing her down, so Noah quickly draws his blade to defend their position against incoming lunges, before kneeling to apply a quick-fix treatment that numbs the woman's injury. While a companion cries out to warn the group of an aggressive bear charging them, and she intercepts the beast with a burst of flames, pushing the monster back. Then Noah checks on the woman, telling her to grit her teeth and keep moving, which lets her rejoin the fray as the companion trades blows with the charging bear, blasting the creature in the face with a searing magical strike, until the heavy impact knocks the beast back into the dirt. Yet another bear emerges from the darkness, forcing the companion to stay alert because she signals to the rest of the group that they need to move immediately, and the massive predator closes the distance with terrifying speed, crashing into their position while the companion leaps clear of its crushing weight, leaving her desperately scrambling to maintain her footing on the unstable ground, while she reaches out to coordinate their next move under immense pressure. And Noah commands the group to halt as the second bear looms over them. Noah and the group spot a cave entrance, urging everyone to scramble toward it because the surrounding forest is swarming with undead closing in, so the lead fighter unleashes a massive torrent of fire to cover their retreat, engulfing the leading undead in flames as the rest of the party pushes forward, incinerating the targets while the heat forces the encroaching horde to recoil. Then she shouts a warning to Noah, sensing danger erupting from their flank where an undead lunges at him with unnatural speed, and the creature slams into Noah, pinning him back against a rock, forcing him to shove the monster away before it can sink its teeth into him, while he blasts the creature with a point-blank magical strike, and the fighter yells for the team to keep moving towards safety, which allows Noah to regroup with the others as they sprint for the cave, where he confirms he is uninjured despite the risk of necrotic poison, so they focus entirely on reaching the shelter before the eclipse swallows them, and the party leaps into the dark opening, desperate to escape the swarm, while one last undead skids to a halt right at the threshold, because the group successfully seals themselves inside the mountain passage, where they listen to the sound of the horde rattling against the rock face. And the fighter notes that the creatures are strangely unwilling to enter the cave, leaving the group to realize they have stumbled upon a truly ominous sanctuary. A rhythmic, heavy thumping resonates from the darkness of the cave, and Orlia demands to know what is happening as a massive, glowing silhouette descends, calling out to Orlia while the party realizes they are not alone in the sanctuary. Then she feels an overwhelming sense of dread. Because an ascendant entity reveals itself, and the system instantly penalizes them with a total attribute lockout, which forces everyone into a state of paralyzed terror, as the dragon-like creature looms directly over the group, and they struggle to even breathe under the crushing weight of its presence. So Orlai accepts their hopeless situation while the air grows heavy with malice. Then the small child starts to wail, breaking the suffocating silence. And the creature draws closer to the source of the noise, while the party watches in absolute horror, unable to lift a finger to intervene as frustration and panic mount among the survivors, which forces them to watch helplessly as the beast hovers right over the terrified girl. Then the creature's focus shifts and it lowers its massive head to gently nuzzle the child, while the girl reaches out to touch the monster's scales with a wide, innocent grin. And she pats the beast as if it were a harmless pet, which causes the oppressive aura to shatter like glass. So the system removes the terror debuff, leaving the party alive and completely baffled by the child's reaction. Noah and his party release a massive sigh of relief as the tension finally snaps, while the creature curls around the child, signaling that their immediate execution is off the table. Then it commands them to leave before the false night ends. So the survivors stammer out an agreement, desperate to put as much distance between them and the beast as possible. And they retreat into the darkening landscape under a blood-red sky, finding a cave entrance to set up a quick camp for the night, where Noah glances back one last time, still struggling to process the encounter, checking his surroundings to ensure they are truly alone as Orlaya plays with the child, unaware that the system just bumped Noah's luck stat to 80. Though Noah remains deeply unsettled by the entire ordeal, so he lays down by the fire, letting the warmth slowly seep into his exhausted frame, while Orlaya watches over him, checking to make sure he is resting properly as Noah requests a short nap and asks her to keep watch for a while. Then he drifts into a deep, heavy sleep, waking up later feeling completely refreshed after only a couple of hours, where he finds the sculptor busy working on a small mechanical creature. So they start talking about the night's events and their lack of actual rest, because the sculptor admits he spent the time repairing his miniature companion, explaining that his creations are special and can shrink at will unlike others, which leads Noah to ask if the tiny construct can actually feel anything. The sculptor laughs off the idea that his creations lack feeling, claiming the little cub he holds feels just as alive as any real creature. And he admits that his life sculptor path is fueled by the dream of crafting perfect living art, which makes Noah chuckle at the sheer scale of that ambition. As they look up at the night sky, both wondering what the future holds for their goals, when a sudden system ping pulls Noah's attention away from the conversation, where he sees his stats have spiked significantly after their recent brush with death. So he starts swiping through his skill list to see exactly what changed. Seeing that his terror resistance has hit level 31 after surviving the depths of the lair, which forces him to realize just how much that nightmare encounter actually scarred him. But he accepts the upgrade as a necessary tool for whatever is coming next, and navigates back to his main attribute screen to see the full impact, finding that his power, agility, constitution, and mystic stats have all surged in a massive level up, which makes Noah cheer loud enough to startle the nearby sculptor. Since the sudden overflow of power is forcing his stats to strengthen simultaneously, though the sheer intensity of the surge causes Noah to stumble and lose his breath, leaving the sculptor visibly concerned by how quickly this new energy is taking hold, as Noah tries to wave off the worry while struggling to keep his balance. But the sculptor insists that his aura is expanding too fast for his body to handle. So Noah decides to start meditating immediately to bring his chaotic internal energy under control. Guiding the process, the sculptor tells Noah to push through the intense physical strain, and Noah focuses on his breathing to stabilize the volatile energy swirling around him, until his mana regeneration hits rank D2 and his total capacity finally reaches 100%, which catches the sculptor's attention as he checks in on Noah's recovery, causing Noah to let out a long breath of relief now that the internal pressure has subsided, confirming to the sculptor that he finally feels back to his normal self, who then explains the strict scaling rules for safe attribute strengthening based on rank, noting that this knowledge is usually reserved for nobles rather than commoners like them. So Noah listens carefully and commits these essential pacing techniques to memory. Then a system notification pings, alerting him that his soul modification has hit level 3, and his Void Hunter's Eye has evolved to level 12, granting him the ability to track life force, which Noah tests out by channeling mana into his vision to perceive the world in a new way, watching as his eyes glow with a sharp, vibrant energy that reveals hidden currents, although he quickly pulls back from the sensory overload to regain his focus. Turning his gaze toward the nearby camp where a faint, mysterious light lingers, and discovering that the source is a glowing scale from an ancient being resting near Arios, while the sculptor approaches to ask how the child is faring after the long night, hearing that the boy's fever has finally broken and his condition is stabilizing, and the sculptor plans to craft a necklace from the scale to shield Arios as he matures. So Noah confirms the night was uneventful and the team prepares to move out together. The monsters are lying low after the eclipse, giving the group a window to finally hit the road, and Orlaya confidently sets their sights on reaching Windrest before the sun goes down. So Noah turns to gather Shea and Arios for the upcoming trek, but he pauses to check in with Shea, sensing she might be holding something back, which prompts Shea to brush off his concern while clearly struggling to keep her composure, admitting she's still rattled by their brush with death against that worm. And with the tension finally addressed, the team gathers their gear and begins the journey, while Noah takes the ancient scale for safekeeping, promising Arios he'll return it once they reach safety. So the group moves out through the quiet forest, scanning their surroundings for any sign of trouble. And by the next day, they reach the outskirts of a massive, walled city floating under a sky filled with gliders, where travelers are busy strapping on mechanical wings powered by embedded mana stones, taking to the skies with rhythmic flaps as Noah watches in complete disbelief at the spectacle. Then Shea explains that these feather gliders are the standard way to cover long distances across the city, and she reminisces about flying with them as a kid, promising to show Noah the ropes. Though he's still trying to adjust to the altitude, wondering if they've approached the gate from the wrong side, but Shea points out a massive wind-powered elevator system that handles the heavy lifting, which the group steps onto, feeling the sudden shift as the platform begins its ascent, and the lift surges upward with a powerful gust, carrying them toward the city's main entrance, causing everyone to scramble for balance as the structure shakes and rattles against the wind. Before they finally steady themselves, taking in the sprawling, breathtaking view of the city from above. The group reaches the city gates, and Noah notes he lacks an entry plate and must clear security, so they head toward the checkpoint, their boots clicking against the stone path as they approach the guards. Urios pauses to offer the group a parting gift for their help in escorting him and his family, and he hands over a set of high-grade mana stones, which the system identifies as a valuable C-grade asset. Shea holds the child while expressing their gratitude for the escort, insisting they get Urios to a healer. But Noah seems genuinely overwhelmed by the generous reward, staring at the glowing stones in his hand. Urios laughs off the hesitation and insists he accepts. Since the group saved them from the woods, then the guard stops them for registration, asking Noah for his name and age to complete the log. An inspection device scans Noah's palm to check for cult affiliations. But the readout stays clear. The guard confirms he has no criminal record on file and waves the group through the gate. Noah walks into the city proper, and the system pings to confirm the completion of his escort quest. Shea follows him, glancing over as his interface updates with a massive reward for the mission. A rare dimensional pocket item appears, granting him personal inventory space that he's been needing. Suddenly, Shea halts his progress, pulling him back to address his lack of official credentials. She looks out over the bustling city as she explains why he needs to blend in better. And Shea insists he needs to get properly registered as an adventurer if he wants to survive here. Noah realizes she is right and pumps his fist in excitement at finally becoming official. She directs him toward a nearby wings vendor who equips him with a pair of mechanical flight gear. Then Shea puts on an enchanted mask that alters her voice and conceals her identity from others. And she jokes that Noah looks like a total stalker, leaving him to process his new gear and look. Shea adjusts her wings, noting that keeping her survival a secret is better than her old party finding out. The duo leaps from the high wall, gliding effortlessly across the open city skyline together. She glances back to check on the rookie, who is still wobbling in the air as they soar. Noah struggles to find his rhythm, watching her master the wind while he fights for balance. Shea calls out that she is heading ahead, telling him to catch up whenever he feels ready. He swallows his nerves, watches her take flight again, and tries to mirror her powerful, smooth launch. The gear finally responds to his mana, so Noah realizes he can actually pull this off. With a sudden jolt of energy, his mechanical wings snap open and catch the updraft. His boots lift off the stone ledge as he finds his footing in the open air. The sensation of weightlessness hits him, and he begins to glide across the city vista. He marvels at how light he feels, finally getting the hang of moving through the sky. Noah commits to the flight, pushing forward and picking up speed as he leaves the wall. He zips past the architecture, though his flight path is still a bit erratic compared to Shea. A guard on a nearby platform spots him flying past and looks on in confusion. The guard wonders what is happening, but Noah is too focused on his trajectory to care. He admits to himself that maneuvering is still pretty awkward despite the cool factor. The wings detect his intent and start stabilizing his posture automatically. He realizes the gear is drawing directly from his mana pool to manipulate the wind currents. The system takes over the finer details of flight, letting him glide with minimal effort. Noah lets out a shout of pure exhilaration as he finally masters his new wings. Noah dives through the clouds, his wings cutting the air as he revels in the sheer freedom of flight. Shea matches his pace, reminding him that the experience is incredible but their time is limited. The guild headquarters is still miles away and their mana reserves for the wings are draining fast. Noah grins at the challenge and proposes a race to keep things interesting. Whoever reaches the destination last is stuck paying for dinner. Shea kicks into high gear, trailing a gust of wind as she surges ahead. Noah laughs and banks hard over the city, loving every second of the high-speed pursuit. A sudden obstacle forces Noah to veer off course, narrowly missing a collision with the architecture. Seeing her lead, Noah pushes his mana to the limit to close the gap. The wing stabilization system overloads in a flash of blue light. Sparks shower from the mechanical frame as the gear suffers a critical failure midair. Gravity takes hold instantly and Noah spirals toward the ground. He curses his luck, struggling to regain control while plummeting through the sky. The wings force a sudden, jerky emergency teleport to compensate for the lost altitude. Noah slams into the hard pavement, his gear battered and his momentum completely spent. Shea touches down gracefully right next to the crash site. The pair brushes off the landing and heads straight for the guild building. They reach the entrance and push through the heavy doors. A mysterious figure suddenly appears in their path, moving with unnatural speed. The stranger blinks across the room and strikes, forcing Noah to narrowly dodge a lethal blow. A massive shockwave erupts in the guild hall and the mysterious attacker gets sent flying into a wooden pillar. The guild master himself steps forward to put the guy in his place. Noah realizes he completely blanked on who actually runs this guild. The guild master demands to know why Noah and Orlai are causing such a scene, so Noah explains that Orlai brought him here for his official registration. The dragon-like guild master immediately drops the aggression and breaks into a grin. Announcing the arrival of a new member to the entire room, a girl approaches to handle the logistics of the new recruit. Noah confirms his intent to join, and she gestures for him to follow. She leads the way with an upbeat attitude, and Noah follows her deeper into the building with Aurelia close behind. They reach a doorway where Noah suddenly stops in his tracks. The room inside is littered with exhausted adventurers sprawled across the floor. She explains that the guild master just finished their brutal sparring session. The recruits look like they have been pushed to their absolute physical limits. Noah watches the scene and can barely hide his own nervous reaction. He walks past the defeated bodies, while she finally settles in behind the desk to start the paperwork, and Noah realizes he might be way out of his depth here. The staff member questions Noah's age, but he fires back that he is older than he looks. Orlai interrupts to push the registration forward, mentioning that Noah lost his identification during a recent quest. The girl behind the desk agrees to help and calls for the necessary records to be retrieved. A magical tome manifests out of thin air. She catches the glowing book as it slides into her reach. The reissue fee is set at 12 F-grade mana stones. Orlia drops the payment on the counter without hesitation, and Orlia officially vouches for Noah since he lacks any formal identification to his name. Noah sweats nervously while she explains the legal protections the guild offers to foreign travelers. She notes that outerworlders typically register with a guild or church to secure their legal status. Joining the guild is the most flexible option for avoiding fealty to local rulers. The staff member confirms that they need to forge a new identity for Noah from scratch. She hands him a registration form and offers to read the contents aloud. Noah accepts the document, which immediately projects a holographic interface. The system displays a legally binding contract for outerworlders that grants the guild jurisdiction over his person. She tells him he can consult a scholar if he needs help parsing the fine print. Both head into a private room to complete the sensitive registration process. Noah Brown provides his personal details, claiming he is 24 years old. The system prompts him to declare if he is involved with any of the 3 forbidden cults. He answers with a simple no, but the magical interface detects a discrepancy and demands an explanation. Noah struggles to find the right words to address the system's persistent error. He confesses he was summoned to Arandir as a sacrifice for the abyssal cultists. Escaping with Aurelia after killing his captors remains the full extent of his past dealings. And the registration staff member listens intently as he explains his limited combat history. The magical interface pulses with light before finally accepting his statement as truth. Moving to the next query, the system asks if he identifies as an ally or foe. Noah insists on a neutral status while the guild prompts him to verify any dark path affiliations. He denies belonging to any of the listed cults, clearing the prompt. Just as the staff member prepares to finalize the registration, a heavy presence enters the room. Rhysar Draken, the guild master of Windrest, apologizes for eavesdropping on their private session. He marches across the room, his massive frame demanding everyone's immediate attention. Rhysar Draken confronts Noah Brown, identifying him as the latest outerworlder to arrive. Claiming he has encountered 2 others like him before, he introduces himself with a predatory grin. Noah Brown shakes the guild master's hand, agreeing immediately to combat evaluation. Rhysar Draken grabs him with sudden, overwhelming force. He hoists Noah Brown off his feet while declaring the start of the test. Orlia reaches out in alarm as Noah Brown is abruptly snatched away. The guild master carries him effortlessly toward the exit, vaulting out of the room with Noah Brown tucked under his arm. Rhysar Draken promises a brutal training field trial to test his true potential. Rhysar Draken flings Noah Brown across the room, and he slams into the stone floor with bone-rattling force, leaving a crater in the ground as he struggles to catch his breath. The guild master goads him to fight back, clapping his hands in mock anticipation, waiting for Noah Brown to show some sign of resistance. Noah Brown asks for a brief moment to prepare for the onslaught, and Rhysar Draken agrees, pointing toward a secure waiting chamber. The heavy metal door slams shut behind him. Leaving Noah Brown alone in the quiet, dusty room, he summons his inventory interface to find a way to survive the coming test, pulling out a legendary tome that he hopes will turn the tide, flipping through the pages to activate its hidden potential. The system asks to unlock the dimensional pocket ability. Noah Brown confirms the choice, triggering a fusion with his existing inventory. The system confirms the successful evolution of his storage space into a legendary skill. Rhysar Draken bangs on the door, impatient for the evaluation to resume. Noah Brown spots a plain vase and decides it is the perfect test subject. The new ability activates with a hum of astral energy, and the vase vanishes instantly into the pocket dimension. Noah Brown feels the object settle securely into his own storage space, ready for the fight. Noah Brown pulls the vase back from his pocket dimension, feeling the surge of mana as he masters the new storage technique. He practices the teleportation flow to ensure he can handle larger items, and realizes the sheer utility of moving objects through space at will. Before Rhysar Draken smashes through the door to initiate the combat trial, Noah Brown stands his ground, confirming he is ready for the challenge. Rhysar Draken demands a demonstration of his fighting prowess. Stepping into the arena as the two prepare for the showdown, the guild master sets the win condition at landing a single successful blow, which sounds deceptively simple to Noah Brown given the opponent's massive presence. While the crowd watches in anticipation of the upcoming brawl, Rhysar Draken laughs off the skepticism, eager to push Noah Brown to his limits, surging with 1,000,000 points of aura as he enters his combat stance. The guild master orders Remy to step in and officiate the match. Both fighters calibrate their distance, waiting for the signal to engage. Remy checks the arena's readiness and signals the start. The official drops her hand to officially kick off the trial. Noah Brown immediately sprints across the gap to close the distance, drawing his blade while channeling his mana for a high-speed strike and launches himself into the air to deliver the first opening blow. Noah Brown makes contact with his blade, but Guildmaster Resar Draken simply laughs off the feint, spinning around to counter the attack with crushing speed and delivering a brutal strike that lands square on his opponent, sending Noah Brown flying across the arena to crash into the floor, where the kid struggles to catch his breath amidst the wreckage, while Resar Draken applauds the clever use of teleportation and storage, causing Noah Brown to tighten his grip on his weapon as his hands shake until the Lifeblood ability kicks in to stabilize his condition, drawing a surprised reaction from the massive Guildmaster, who goads Noah Brown to recover and push his limits even further. Surrounding the fighter in a shroud of dark, pulsating energy, which Noah Brown channels into his next high-velocity movement, blinking instantly across the field to reappear behind his opponent, unleashing a barrage of strikes that ping off Resar Draken's defenses, but the Guildmaster effortlessly pushes back against the onslaught, shrugging off the pressure with his overwhelming aura, while Resar Draken admires the strange void powers being displayed. As Noah Brown lunges in one more time to force a hit, only for Resar Draken to snatch the blade out of the air mid-swing. Resar Draken keeps his grip tight, making it clear Noah Brown's current strategy is failing, and the Guildmaster suggests swapping to a spear to better suit Noah Brown's erratic movement, before he blinks away with a sudden, fluid motion, leaving Noah Brown to realize the massive gap in their reach. While Resar Draken tosses the stolen blade aside, taunting him for such a weak opening, so the weapon clatters to the floor, leaving Noah Brown completely unarmed, then the Guildmaster shifts his stance to signal the start of his own offensive, causing onlookers to tense up as the air pressure in the arena spikes, since Resar Draken prepares to launch a heavy strike, and he dashes forward with enough force to shatter the stone tiles, creating a massive crater where he stood just a split second before, which forces Noah Brown to shift his focus to track his opponent's blurred path, because the Guildmaster slams into the ground with devastating power, though Noah Brown barely manages to slide out of the way, realizing the speed difference is lethal, while Resar Draken laughs off the dodge, praising his reflexes, and promises that the real fight is only just beginning. Then he lunges in a second time with a strike aimed straight at Noah Brown, forcing Noah Brown to desperately clash against his massive arm, and the sheer impact rattles his bones, testing the limits of his endurance, so he kicks off the floor to create space before the next barrage lands. Resar Draken activates his power, causing his limbs to shift and flare with intense energy, and he launches a ferocious, mid-air assault directly at Noah Brown, forcing Noah Brown to scramble backward in a desperate attempt to avoid the lethal strike. But the Guildmaster's clawed hand connects, drawing blood as he slashes across Noah Brown's defense. Then he pivots with unnatural speed to snatch Noah Brown's weapon right out of his grip, and he swings the limb with such torque that Noah Brown is sent reeling across the arena floor, where Resar Draken pins him down, mocking the origin of Noah Brown's grafted void arm. While Noah Brown struggles to catch his breath under the heavy weight of the Guildmaster's restraint, but a sudden surge of dark, pulsating energy begins to leak from Noah Brown's arm, catching Resar Draken by surprise as he notices the strange, shadowy aura manifesting, yet the Guildmaster refuses to let up, pinning the limb firmly to keep the power contained, so Noah Brown gasps for air, his body visibly strained by the physical toll of the suppression. While Resar Draken taunts him, claiming the void arm's own weight and his aura are actively working against him, and the Guildmaster activates a glowing interface to analyze the void arm's hidden properties. Then he discards a piece of leather gear he stripped from Noah Brown during the scuffle, causing a flicker of distraction that forces Resar Draken to glance away for a split second, and the hooded figure watches from the sidelines as the arena atmosphere shifts with the sudden release of energy. While Resar Draken grins, impressed by the unexpected display of craftiness from his opponent, so he tosses Noah Brown's weapon high into the air, demanding more intensity from the fight, and the blade spins toward the ceiling as the duel escalates to a dangerous new level. Noah Brown snatches his falling blade right out of the air, and he instantly triggers his dimensional pocket to gain a tactical edge, shifting the very fabric of the arena into a digital, grid-like plane. So he takes a split second to analyze his disadvantage against the Guildmaster, realizing his only hope is to stop fighting fair against an opponent this much stronger, which is when he spots a handful of jagged dark stones near his feet, scooping them up in a desperate bid to turn the tide, and he hurls the debris directly into Resar Draken's face to blind him, causing the Guildmaster to roar in pain as the rocks strike his eyes. Yet the beast form warrior continues to spam magical projectiles despite his temporary blindness, forcing Noah Brown to weave through the barrage while closing the distance, though the Guildmaster still manages to track his movement by sensing the mana fluctuations, and a sudden system warning flashes red, signaling that Noah Brown is dangerously low on mana, so he forces a blink teleport to bypass the incoming storm of magic. Peering right in the Guildmaster's blind spot to land a decisive blow, but Resar Draken anticipates the maneuver and flips him midair, slamming Noah Brown into the hard arena floor with bone-crushing force, and the Guildmaster looms over his downed opponent to deliver a mocking taunt, despite the debris still obscuring his vision as he readies one final strike, which drives Noah Brown to desperately stab upward to survive the onslaught. Resar Draken catches the blade with his bare hand. Then his expression shifts from murderous intent to a calm, toothy grin, declaring the match over while offering a hand to pull Noah Brown back to his feet, and the exhausted fighter accepts the gesture to finally stand up, while the arena system officially announces that Noah Brown has cleared the combat evaluation, sending the watching crowd into a complete frenzy over the underdog's victory, where curious onlookers scramble to check their own records to find out where Noah Brown ranks. Discovering that he scored a 48 and landed squarely in the top 50, leaving the crowd in awe as he stands center stage, while he turns to the staff member to ask how long he actually held out against the guild master, and she explains that Resar Draken had already fought 174 people today, which means Noah Brown was the 175th opponent. Leaving the kid absolutely baffled that he survived a spar against a man who has been grinding all day, then his system interface erupts with a cascade of level-up notifications, showing massive jumps in power, agility, and new intermediate skill proficiency, specifically noting that his blink ability has hit the intermediate level, which prompts him to wonder if there is even a distance limit on his teleportation anymore. While he reviews the new knowledge about manipulating the fabric of space, and his stats continue to climb as the system finalizes the massive influx of data, leaving him to walk away from the arena with a whole new level of potential. Noah Brown steps into the room, still buzzing from his recent victory, but he immediately catches a foul mood radiating from the others, and he realizes his timing is terrible as Aurelia and her companion trade tense words. For Remy reveals that abyssal cultists have managed to slip past her security, which leads Noah Brown to ask if this is about Aurelia's former party, so the woman confirms that her own situation was not an isolated incident, and Remy adds that more people have gone missing, all linked to specific guild member quests, while she worries that a total loss of faith in the guild is now imminent, but Noah Brown wants to know if she has actually tracked down their current whereabouts. So Remy focuses her intent to pull the location from the ether, and magical energy coalesces into a physical document as she employs rare fate magic, which leaves Noah Brown and the guild member watching in stunned silence as the weave of reality shifts to manifest the hidden truth, and Remy hands the newly conjured information directly to Noah Brown, since the document reveals the cultists are hiding out in Aquaris. So Noah Brown acknowledges the intel and prepares to take matters into his own hands, and Remy officially tasks him with hunting down the traitors, while the system confirms the high-difficulty quest and adds a requirement to keep one alive. Then the guild member mentions a spear purchase Noah Brown had previously discussed, and she leads him out into the city to track down his new gear. The city streets are bustling as Noah Brown follows the guild member through the shadows, and she leads him deep into a sketchy alleyway to find the rumored weapon merchant. Then they arrive at a nondescript door and step inside the workshop without hesitation, where they are immediately greeted by an old acquaintance of hers named Josiah, who recognizes her instantly and welcomes her back with a wide, enthusiastic grin, and he clearly has not changed a bit since the last time they were together, so they share a quick, friendly embrace to celebrate their unexpected reunion. Then she introduces Noah Brown to the crafter, noting that they are traveling together, and the two men exchange a polite greeting as they get acquainted, since Josiah comes from a family of renowned crafters and specializes in high-end gear. But the mood turns serious when she asks about the status of her previous gauntlets, and she explains they were lost during her capture and likely sold off by now, so Josiah looks contemplative as he processes the bad news regarding her lost equipment. Then he pivots to a new idea, offering to forge her a custom spellbound set, and she agrees to the deal with a smile, clearly happy to have his expertise again, while Noah Brown jumps in to specify that he is looking for a specialized spear, so Josiah nods and motions for Noah Brown to follow him into the back room, where they walk past various displays of fine weaponry to find a suitable match. Then Josiah presents a rare spear capable of landing triple strikes through wind mana. But he suggests a wind slasher spear instead, claiming its wind blade effect is better suited for combat. Josiah tells Noah Brown to take his pick from the armory, and the young warrior paces through the rows of lethal steel until a sudden surge of dark energy stops him dead in his tracks, because a nearby spear is pulsating with a bloodrot curse that kills its owner, though Noah Brown ignores the danger and asks to inspect the forbidden weapon anyway. So a reluctant Josiah hands over the Spear of Crimson End for a closer look, and Noah Brown immediately insists on purchasing the death-dealing artifact, which leaves Josiah completely baffled by such a reckless and suicidal choice, just as a mysterious rift tears open in the room, pulling them toward its swirling vortex, and the sheer force of the suction makes the air in the workshop vibrate, while a cloaked figure appears and claims the wind itself is calling them inside. And Noah Brown questions the lethal consequences of stepping into the unstable mana storm, but the rift remains wide open, humming with a dangerous and irresistible power, so the hooded stranger reaches out to grab Noah Brown's hand, despite Noah Brown clearly thinking this whole plan is a terrible mistake. Then the pair locks eyes for a split second before the world shifts, and they vanish into the shimmering light of the portal, while the crushing pressure of the rift tears at them from every single direction, as they plunge deeper into the unknown void with no way to turn back, and they finally arrive at their destination as the energy begins to stabilize. A glowing doorway manifests in the void, acting as the final exit from the rift, and the blinding light surges outward as Noah Brown and the hooded figure cross the threshold, while a system alert confirms their arrival into the wind astral plane. So the duo crashes onto the floor in a heap of tangled limbs and confusion, where the hooded figure immediately questions the reckless nature of their forced entry, but a mysterious voice echoes through the chamber to offer them a cold welcome, as a woman seated on a lavish throne observes her uninvited guests with a sharp gaze, and her regal appearance suggests she is far more than a simple local inhabitant, while Noah Brown stares in awe at the sheer majesty of the throne room. And he instinctively attempts to use his Identify skill to gauge her true power level, but the system fails to display any information, returning only a series of question marks, So the woman bursts into laughter, mocking Noah Brown for trying to scan a literal goddess, which prompts the hooded figure to urge Noah Brown to drop the formalities, because she reveals herself as the goddess of knowledge, confirming she already knows everything about him. Then she takes a calm sip of her drink while watching them squirm, and Noah Brown quickly bows in apology, desperate to salvage the situation, while the hooded figure tries to shift the blame for their intrusion onto Noah Brown, as the goddess explains that while she permits elementals to travel here, humans are strictly forbidden. Then she leans in to listen to a whisper from the tiny elemental floating near her. And the goddess dismisses Noah Brown's potential as a threat, labeling him merely lost and incredibly stupid. Orlia insults Noah Brown's intelligence to the hooded figure, but the goddess of knowledge intervenes to defend Noah Brown's presence, claiming that fate itself guided him and his companion into her domain. Then she snaps her fingers to address the foul void scent clinging to him, and a sudden burst of energy engulfs Noah Brown, leaving Orlia startled. While Noah Brown stares in utter confusion at the unexpected cleansing, realizing he remains completely dry despite the intense wave of magic. So the goddess explains she scrubbed away the filth left by his parasitic hitchhiker, after which she draws closer to inspect him more thoroughly, and she locks eyes with him to probe his internal state. Then she pulls a glowing crimson spear directly from within Noah Brown, revealing the weapon formerly belonged to a high-ranking member of the Scarlet Valkyries, and she notes the spear is cursed but potentially useful in the right hands, asking if Noah Brown understands the weight of the fate mark on his skin, so he admits total ignorance regarding the identity of this Raelina person, which prompts the hooded figure to identify Raelina as an ancient war goddess, while the goddess of knowledge confirms this history and points out the spear's origin. Then she questions Noah Brown on why he bears such a deep connection to her, and he struggles to process the divine implications of her intense interrogation, so Noah Brown apologizes for his confusion as the goddess grips the spear tightly. Noah Brown struggles to recall any details about his forgotten past, yet the goddess of knowledge insists that his very existence suggests Raelina's return, and she watches him closely, clearly amused by the depths of his confusion. Before she confirms that the fate mark on his skin is a literal compass, then she sends the cursed spear back to him with a cryptic instruction to seek the war goddess out, adding that he must convey her personal regards when they eventually meet. So Noah Brown pivots the conversation toward the immediate threat of the abyssal cult, asking for intel on how they are infiltrating the guild and endangering innocent people, but the goddess calmly sips her drink and rejects the request, explaining that the void actively shields the cult from her divine perception, which leaves Noah Brown feeling defeated until she offers a compromise involving her legendary library, demanding a trade of secret knowledge in exchange for access to her collection. So Noah Brown and the hooded figure exchange a look, trying to think of a bargaining chip, until an idea suddenly clicks for Noah Brown, and he whispers a secret from his own world into her ear, which leaves the goddess genuinely shocked by the revelation while she agrees to the deal, clearly intrigued by the obscure legend he shared, granting them full access to roam her palace and browse the archives, though she warns them not to disturb Vati, a recluse who hates visitors, and Noah Brown chuckles, having successfully traded Earth's celebrity gossip for divine knowledge. The goddess of knowledge brushes off Orlia's skepticism, confident in her own divine expertise. While Noah Brown settles into the library archives to sort through the vast collection of books, and he notices Tony finally beginning to stir from a long, deep slumber, waking up with a yawn and a stretch to reunite with his partner. Though Noah Brown keeps things chill, brushing off the quiet time they spent apart, yet he has been mulling over a new way for Tony to exist outside of his own body, proposing that the sentient shadow might appreciate having more autonomy and personal space. So he pulls out a ring as a potential vessel for the creature, and Tony tests the fit, signaling he is ready to try inhabiting the new accessory, which triggers a massive surge of dark energy pouring out from the shadow's form, swirling and condensing around the ring in a thick, concentrated stream of power, until the energy pulses with a bright light as the transition begins to take hold, and the process succeeds, leaving Tony firmly anchored within the golden band. With his eye now centered perfectly on the ring, blinking in clear surprise, causing Noah Brown to laugh in delight at how perfectly the plan worked out, checking in to make sure his partner feels alright in his new home, then he asks if Tony can figure out how to detach from the jewelry itself, which leaves the eye stumped for a second before a sudden realization hits, and the dark essence begins to expand and bulk up around the ring, demonstrating that Tony can still manifest his shadow form at will, clenching his fist in victory. Tony transforms into a tiny single-eyed bat, flapping his wings with surprising grace. Noah Brown watches in amusement as the creature sparkles, sarcastically calling the little monster cute. Wonder fills his expression as he tracks the bat flying through the library. The system pings repeatedly, announcing that Noah Brown has hit level 10. Notification confirms his rank has increased to intermediate, granting him the metamorphosis ability, while stats for his various skills skyrocket, confirming he has grown significantly more powerful. Noah Brown stands alone in the aisles, checking the massive influx of system data. A familiar, mocking voice suddenly insults his hygiene, making him stop in his tracks. The spirit mentions meeting his mother, prompting Noah Brown to retort that she had better manners. Strange, wispy entities begin dancing around him, chattering incessantly and ignoring his irritation. One of the spirits drifts ahead, beckoning for Noah Brown to follow it through the halls. He sighs, deciding that indulging these bizarre creatures might be worth the effort. A glowing trail leads him deeper into the library, and he begins to pursue. Curiosity gets the better of him, so he decides to see what they are hiding. The air hums with energy as he commits to following the trail to its end. The The spirit calls out from just ahead, urging Noah Brown to keep moving forward. His footsteps echo through the vast, quiet corridor as he closes the distance. Surprise lights up his face when he finally sees what is waiting for him. An ornate fountain stands in the center of the room, surrounded by the swirling spirits. Noah Brown approaches the display, wondering what secrets this location might finally reveal. The little spirit giggles as it dances above the water, and Noah Brown reaches out, watching a single droplet splash into the pool. Before he realizes something is wrong and recoils in pure disbelief, seeing an entire world reflected beneath the surface of the water, a sharp claw reaches out to stop him from touching the liquid, revealing a giant, majestic peacock that has suddenly manifested beside him, and Noah Brown stumbles back, momentarily caught off guard by the sudden appearance. The bird identifies itself as Vadi and confirms it guards Avra's library. Vadi complains about Avra's obsession with mortals, clearly annoyed by her choices, sniffing the air. The creature detects the scent of the void and crimson on Noah Brown, and Vadi realizes his presence here is bound by fate rather than simple accident. Noah Brown demands to know if his destiny is being forced, but Vadi just laughs. Explaining that while infinite paths exist, fate nudges certain people toward specific outcomes. The bird notes his strong connection to the path, leaving Noah Brown feeling more than a little uneasy. Vadi grows impatient, declaring that its slumber has been disturbed and demanding he leave, warning him never to return to the wind astral realm or face the consequences. And Noah Brown quickly asks for one favor before being kicked out. Pulling out his spear to ask for guidance on how to manage the weapon, he explains that he has found no information on how to stop the encroaching crimson rot, and Vadi delivers the brutal news that the corruption is incurable and healing magic only accelerates the decay. Noah Brown presses for an alternative, refusing to accept that the rot is a death sentence. Vadi suggests bonding with the spirit inside the spear to make the corruption submit as his servant. Provided he can master the weapon before the rot consumes his body entirely, the realization hits that this cursed artifact is actually the Spear of Crimson End. A wicked grin spreads across his face as he accepts the deadly gamble. He plants the spear into the ground and tears his shirt open. Ready to embrace the pain, Vadi watches with cold amusement. Promising to remember this foolish mortal regardless of the outcome, Noah Brown offers a final thanks before diving headfirst into the abyss. The world warps as he activates the bond, plunging himself into the spear's dark consciousness. System notifications flare up, warning that his max health will drain every minute while the rot runs rampant. He confirms the bond, and the crimson energy surges through his veins in a violent wave. Reality shifts, dropping him into a sea of blood littered with the bleached bones of the fallen. Corpses litter the landscape as far as the eye can see, creating a haunting, endless graveyard. Noah Brown surveys the desolate wasteland, trying to make sense of the nightmare he has entered. A mysterious figure emerges from the gloom, its presence radiating a terrifying and ancient malice. He grips his weapon tighter, bracing for whatever horror is about to emerge from the blood-soaked horizon. Stepping over the scattered remains, he realizes he is not alone in this forbidden realm. A silhouette of a warrior stands in the distance, waiting for him with a spear of her own. He charges forward with a roar, demanding to know what kind of entity he is facing. The entity turns, revealing a pair of glowing red eyes that lock onto Noah Brown with predatory intent. The Scarlet Valkyrie remnant confirms his suspicion. Identifying herself as the spirit bound to his weapon, she immediately swings the spear in a lethal arc, forcing him to react instantly. Noah Brown narrowly dodges as the blade slices through the air where he stood a second ago. He blinks across the battlefield to close the distance before she can reset her stance. Their weapons collide with a massive shockwave, sending ripples through the blood sea, skidding back into the gore. Noah Brown realizes this opponent is leagues above his previous trials. He pulls his spear from the impact crater, his focus intensifying as he marks her movements. The Valkyrie launches a heavy, sweeping counterattack that forces him to retreat further. Her glowing eyes track his every shift, waiting for the slightest opening in his defense. She channels the spear's power, summoning a rain of golden projectiles from the blood-red sky. Dodging the onslaught, Noah Brown struggles to find an angle against her superior reach. The spirit entity calmly grips her weapon, seemingly unfazed by the intensity of the exchange. More blades manifest in the air, leaving him no room to maneuver around the barrage. He blinks frantically to evade the incoming rain of steel, barely keeping his health bar intact. Each step through the blood sea kicks up waves of red, slowing him down at every turn. The Scarlet Valkyrie remnant charges forward, her spear leveled directly at his vitals. Realizing he cannot just defend, Noah Brown prepares to gamble everything on a single aggressive dash. He blinks behind her as she commits to her thrust, aiming to catch her off guard. Swinging with all his remaining strength, he commits to a strike aimed at her exposed flank. His spear pierces through her chest, finally landing a critical blow in this brutal duel. The corrosive blood of the entity starts eating away at Noah Brown's skin, forcing a pained roar from the Scarlet Valkyrie remnant as she reels from the direct hit. She recovers instantly and unleashes a fiery shockwave to create distance. While Noah Brown keeps his focus locked on her every movement to avoid getting skewered, golden spears tear through the space where he stood, but he blinks away just in time to survive. He narrowly dodges a lethal blow, knowing full well that one mistake means game over. Dark energy begins to swirl around his weapon, pulsating with a dangerous, unstable power, gripping the shaft tight. Noah Brown prepares a counterattack that channels his remaining stamina. He hurls the enchanted projectile directly at the entity, cutting through the air. Shock registers on the Scarlet Valkyrie remnant's face as the attack closes the gap. The strike lands true and pierces deep into her chest, pinning her in place, immediately blinking behind her. Noah Brown capitalizes on her vulnerability. He carves a deep wound across her back, his blade tearing through her defenses. The corrupted blood at her wound site begins to boil, reacting violently to his aura. Leaping back to evade the spray of burning liquid, he maintains his aggressive momentum. He summons a gravitational pulse to seize control of the battlefield. Reaching out with his ability, Noah Brown clamps down on the shaft of her spear. The Scarlet Valkyrie remnant shrieks in defiance, but he yanks the weapon from her grip, swinging the stolen spear in a massive arc. He forces her into a defensive retreat. And he turns the tide completely, leaving the entity scrambling to defend herself from her own steel. Noah Brown lands a brutal strike, knocking the spear away and disarming the entity. Panting heavily, he towers over the Scarlet Valkyrie remnant as she struggles to rise. Rage flashes in her eyes, yet she remains cornered and forced onto the defensive. A massive explosion of energy erupts from her body, pushing Noah Brown back instantly. The blinding light clarifies to show her gathering a new weapon from the flames. She launches herself forward with a shockwave, closing the distance in a heartbeat. The sheer force of her arrival sends Noah Brown crashing into the blood-drenched ground. His own health bar plummets while he realizes the entity is rapidly regenerating her wounds. Golden energy pulses across her skin, sealing the gashes he worked so hard to open. The Scarlet Valkyrie remnant taunts him to continue the fight, confident in her recovery. Determination sharpens her gaze as she prepares to overwhelm him with pure speed. She rushes him again, her spear poised for a lethal, high-velocity strike. Noah Brown grinds his teeth and braces for the impact, meeting her charge head-on. Their weapons collide with enough force to rattle the very air between them. Metal screeches against metal as they trade a flurry of lethal blows. She manages to land a clean hit, forcing him to block with everything he has. The spear tip bites deep into his side, drawing a fresh spray of blood. Pain racks his frame as the system displays his health dropping to a critical 23%. Realizing he cannot win a prolonged war of attrition, Noah Brown activates a tactical retreat. A warp circle manifests beneath his boots, pulling him away just as her spear strikes again. Noah Brown makes his move, channeling energy to finally land a decisive strike. The projectile pierces deep into his target, causing her to stagger under the unexpected weight. A system alert confirms the bleed status is active, and Noah Brown lets out a satisfied grin. He stands his ground as the warp effect stabilizes, ready to capitalize on the opening he created. The system triggers a powerful ability, flooding the arena with a torrential wave of crimson. Blood begins to pool rapidly across the floor, consuming everything in a thick, visceral tide. Noah Brown checks his status window, but his face drops when he sees his maximum health has inexplicably plummeted, clutching his chest as the debuff takes hold. He struggles to process the sudden change. A brief flash of light signals that the Scarlet Valkyrie remnant has broken free from her suppression. She lunges forward in a blur of motion, driving her spear through him before he can even blink. The force of her counterattack sends them both spinning across the blood-soaked battlefield. She keeps her weapon buried deep, pinning Noah Brown to the spot while he fights to stay upright, tightening her grip on the shaft. The Scarlet Valkyrie remnant yanks the spear back with lethal intent. Shock registers on his face as the reality of the situation hits him. She does not stop there, following up with a savage bite that tears right through his defenses. He lets out a desperate cry, forced to endure the agony of her relentless assault, raining down heavy blows. She refuses to let him recover for even a single second. A final, thunderous strike knocks Noah Brown backward, leaving him reeling in the encroaching red tide. Crimson droplets hit the surface of the pool, counting down the seconds until he finally falls. Noah Brown glances at his flickering interface one last time, realizing his survival now depends on an immediate, desperate pivot. The system triggers a blood rain, forcing liquid death to erupt across the battlefield. Noah Brown watches in disbelief as the environment itself turns into a weapon. The Scarlet Valkyrie remnant questions his nature while standing amidst the crimson tide. Blood pours from his chest wound. Yet Noah Brown refuses to drop his guard. She lunges with a lethal kick, forcing him to scramble backward to stay alive. Projectiles swarm the arena, creating a deadly gauntlet for him to navigate. Barely dodging a massive swing, Noah Brown counterattacks with everything he has left. She explodes forward, putting immense pressure on his already failing defenses. A jagged slash connects, carving through his remaining stamina like paper. The Scarlet Valkyrie remnant prepares another strike. Her eyes locked onto his vital spots, pain flares as he takes another hit, his health bar dipping dangerously low. Lifeblood activates, surging through Noah Brown as he curses the efficiency of her healing. He dashes across the pool, desperate to close the distance before she resets. Clashing weapons send shockwaves through the blood, turning the ground into a chaotic mess. His max health drops to 59%, forcing Noah Brown to realize this is a war of attrition. Circles of energy expand outward, trapping them both in a high-speed lethal dance. A low mana warning flashes, putting her on the defensive against his relentless pressure. He capitalizes on her opening, dashing in to deliver a decisive blow. Mana stones restore his reserves to full, giving Noah Brown the edge he needs. Steel rings out as they lock weapons, each fighter testing the other's absolute limit. Ripples of blue energy tear through the air as the Scarlet Valkyrie remnant shifts her stance. Noah Brown teleports into her blind spot, drawing his blade to intercept her next move. Blood-red energy surges from the clash as both weapons collide with lethal force. The force of the strike drives her spear deep into the pool, pinning her movement. Dozens of phantom projectiles erupt from the impact, shredding through her armor in a single volley. Noah Brown realizes he is running on fumes as a low mana warning flashes across his vision. The Scarlet Valkyrie remnant struggles to stay upright as her weapon is knocked from her grasp. She collapses into the blood-soaked pool, her strength finally failing as the spear hits the surface. Noah Brown hits his knees, gasping for air while the adrenaline leaves his system. His head spins from a severe mana backlash, blinding him with sharp, pulsating pain. Trembling hands reach out toward the water as the environment begins to stabilize around them. The Scarlet Valkyrie remnant whispers a final plea for her mother, her spirit fading into the red haze. Noah Brown stares at her in shock, catching the final words of his dying opponent. She reaches out one last time, admitting her failure before her consciousness slips away completely. Silence falls over the bloodied arena as she slumps forward, defeated by the weight of her mission. Noah Brown approaches her broken form, reaching out to reclaim the spear she abandoned. He drives the weapon into the ground, marking the end of the grueling duel. The Scarlet Valkyrie remnant takes one last shallow breath, her eyes losing their final glimmer of life. Noah Brown leans on the spear, his own wounds bleeding freely as he surveys the aftermath. A system notification confirms the Scarlet Valkyrie remnant is dead, forcing a hollow victory upon him. A dark substance erupts from the ground and grabs Noah Brown, pulling him into a crimson pool as the system identifies a crimson wrought Valkyrie. The enemy clawing her way out of the blood demands forgiveness, then slams Noah Brown into the crimson floor with bone-crushing force. Standing over the broken man while his strength completely fails him, he manages to grab her leg in a desperate attempt to retaliate, only for the crimson wrought Valkyrie to hoist him up like a ragdoll, tossing Noah Brown through the air into the churning Red Sea. He skids across the blood-soaked surface, barely keeping his balance. A searing pain pierces his chest as he realizes the gravity of her power. Mocking his efforts from across the arena, the entity prepares her next strike. She whips the crimson energy around her, weaving a deadly vortex. Tendrils of rot dance through the air, responding to her every command. The crimson wrought Valkyrie manifests more of the corruption, proving her reserves are endless. Her presence looming larger as the blood begins to boil. Thorny vines emerge from the depths, wrapping around her limbs. A floral halo made of jagged blades forms above her head. Standing amidst the carnage, she radiates a terrifying, twisted beauty. Noah Brown realizes he needs a massive boost to survive this encounter and crushes a mana stone, causing his attributes to spike across the board. Noah Brown launches himself forward, closing the distance in a blur of motion. But the crimson wrought Valkyrie reacts instantly, her twisted energy hissing as she evades the initial strike. Spotting her discarded spear, Noah Brown snatches it up to turn the tide. Their weapons collide with a deafening ring, shaking the very ground they stand on, yet the Valkyrie is not phased, forcing Noah Brown to pivot midair to dodge her counter. Relying on his enhanced speed, he teleports behind her to land a decisive blow. Eyes locked onto his target, Noah Brown triggers his blink ability, materializing right behind the Valkyrie. He catches her completely off guard. His strike lands with enough force to send shockwaves through the blood-filled arena. However, the Valkyrie recovers, grabbing Noah Brown by the throat. Air leaves his lungs as her grip tightens, cutting off his breathing. She drags him backward, overpowering his resistance with raw, corrupt strength. Slamming Noah Brown against the terrain, she pins him down. The spear clatters away as she forces him into a suffocating hold. Taunting him about his reliance on raw power, she prepares a lethal follow-up. Crimson energy surges into her palm, but Noah Brown manages to kick her away, using the small opening to reposition. He teleports to safety, coughing and gasping for air. Noah Brown regains his footing. Memories of past battles with stronger foes flood his mind, serving as a desperate reminder to focus. Realization strikes him as he recognizes a specific combat pattern that might just be the key to victory. Noah Brown warps back into the fray, his hand already glowing with a fresh tactical maneuver. He plunges his strike straight into the Valkyrie's guard, forcing her to trade blow for blow. She manages to pierce his shoulder with her spear, but Noah Brown refuses to drop his guard. The entity triggers her blood drain skill, and Noah Brown watches his status window flicker. His maximum health capacity is actively shrinking, forcing him to gamble on a desperate countermeasure. Neurotoxins course into his blade, turning the weapon into a specialized tool for breaking her regenerative cycle. Declaring his intent to master the spear, Noah Brown initiates a forced bond with the artifact. He dives forward with the crimson spear held high, aiming to override the Valkyrie's control. The blade makes contact, searing through her blood-based defenses and causing her to recoil. Noah Brown follows up with a precision strike that clips the Valkyrie across her torso. She swings back with wild intensity, clipping Noah Brown and forcing him to grunt in pain. Blood trickles down his face as he acknowledges her vicious reach. He teleports again to create space, his eyes locking onto the Valkyrie's exposed guard. Unleashing the Void Flutter ability, Noah Brown cascades shadows over the entire battlefield. He lunges with a strike so fast it leaves a trail of distortion in the air. The Valkyrie prepares a counterblast, but Noah Brown's pressure is already too intense to ignore. His spear snaps through her core energy, shattering the rhythm of her defense. Blood tendrils whip through the air as he severs her healing connection. Noah Brown signals the final phase, charging his weapon with every remaining shred of his energy. He descends in a flash of light, aiming to put the Valkyrie down once and for all. The crimson spear plunges deep, piercing the Valkyrie as Noah Brown commits his full weight. Her exsanguinator skill activates in retaliation, pulling life force directly from the strike. Noah Brown feels his footing falter as the connection snaps. Disbelief hits him when he realizes the drain is still active despite his earlier maneuver. The Valkyrie pulls him into a lethal embrace, binding him with blood-forged thorns. Teeth sink into his throat, tearing through his defenses as she begins to feed. Shock gives way to panic when he realizes he cannot break her grip. System alerts fire off, warning that the Valkyrie curse is crippling his health and paralyzing his movements. Blade-like thorns lash out, shredding his chest as he gasps for air. Bone snaps under the pressure of her constriction, leaving him unable to fight back. Death draws closer while she holds him tight, her eyes glowing with predatory hunger. His health bar plummets toward single digits as the thorns tighten their crushing hold. Critical failure looms with his health hitting 3%. A final heavy strike pins him down, and he accepts the reality of the crimson rot. The world fades as he acknowledges that this is his end. Exhaustion takes hold, blurring his vision while he prepares to drift away. Peace finally arrives as his body collapses into the pool of blood. The system displays the final verdict in red, confirming his total defeat. Darkness swallows his consciousness, yet he finds himself caught in a strange, limbo-like space. A voice calls out to him from the void, shattering the silence of his death. Noah Brown recognizes the voice as Tony, his reanimated ally now manifesting as a floating entity. Tony explains that this void is a place where reality and non-reality collide, struggling to make sense of his situation. Noah Brown demands a more coherent explanation. The entity warns that Noah Brown is losing a battle of wills against his own demise. Tony reveals that the spear represents Noah Brown's willpower, currently locked in combat against the Crimson Rot. Seeing his health at 0%, Noah Brown questions if he has truly died. Tony clarifies that his mind is merely deceived by the Valkyrie and that he is not actually dead yet, knowing the Crimson Rot is still consuming him. Tony insists Noah Brown must force his consciousness to fight. Confused by the process, Noah Brown asks if he can somehow drag his spirit back into his body. Tony decides to demonstrate, causing a dark, visceral energy to surge into Noah Brown's chest. Physical pain racks Noah Brown as the force connection takes hold. Agony overwhelms his senses while Tony screams for him to focus on his own mind. Noah Brown stares into the eyes of the entity within his psyche. Reclaiming his internal spark surging with newfound determination, he prepares to launch himself back into the physical realm. In the real world, the spear remains embedded, pinning Noah Brown down as the rot spreads. His hand begins to tremble and grip the weapon, signaling his return to consciousness. Noah Brown grabs the spear, finally breaking the hold of the vines that chained him. The Valkyrie recoils in pure disbelief, caught off guard by his sudden resurgence. Blood drips from his wounds as he prepares to leap toward his enemy. The stalemate breaks, and he launches himself forward to reclaim the fight. Noah Brown stares down the Valkyrie, refusing to let the battle end here. Dark energy surges through his frame as he muscles past the lingering physical trauma. The abyssal symbiote triggers its metamorphosis, boosting all his attributes by a massive 25%. 60 seconds remain on the clock, and he charges forward to close the distance. Steel meets steel with a deafening clank as they lock weapons in a brutal clash. Noah Brown follows through with a ruthless slash, landing a direct hit that forces his opponent back. The Valkyrie stumbles, desperate to regain her footing after that unexpected counterattack. Sensing Tony's influence in these combat adjustments, Noah Brown realizes exactly who is pulling the strings. Shadows whip around him in a frenzy, manifesting his newfound power into a physical shroud. One eye glows with an unnatural, predatory light as his connection to the void deepens. Multiple eyes blink open within the darkness behind him, marking his complete transformation. Noah Brown now stands as an equal, ready to deliver a finishing blow to his adversary. A mana stone vanishes into his system, surging his energy levels by 300%. All of his core attributes spike by another 50 points, pushing his physical ceiling higher. His opponent swings back with everything she has, desperate to stop the onslaught. Their weapons collide again, sending shockwaves through the immediate area. Noah Brown feels stronger than ever as he dominates the center of the exchange. A relentless sequence of swings and parries leaves the Valkyrie struggling to keep up. She finally registers the sheer gap in their power and realizes she is losing. 37 seconds remain, and he continues to drive her into a corner with unstoppable force. The symbiote hardens his skin to deflect the incoming strike. Noah Brown counters with a flurry of shadow-infused blows that overwhelm the Valkyrie. She's sent spiraling backward from the sheer kinetic force of the impact. Before she can recover, another rapid adaptation shifts his shadow form to match her speed. His blade catches her strike midair with a resonant chime. Tony maneuvers her blade into a disadvantageous position, giving Noah Brown the perfect opening. A projectile weapon is launched through the air toward his position. Glowing magic circles manifest instantly to intercept the incoming attack. The weapon is pulled back into his grip, and he lunges forward with renewed intensity. A precise thrust pierces through her defenses, pinning her mid-leap. The Valkyrie gasps as the shadows erupt within her, destabilizing her form. She loses her footing and plummets toward the ground. Noah Brown closes the distance to deliver a final, decisive strike. The blade bites deep, forcing her to the floor in defeat. His dark companion confirms the successful adaptation, fueling the next wave of power. A high, sweeping kick sends her crashing into the abyss below. He stands over the wreckage as energy ripples across the battlefield. Glowing spikes erupt from the ground, sealing her remaining routes of escape. Noah Brown unleashes a final, wide-reaching slash that cleaves through the remaining resistance. 17 seconds remain on the clock, and the Valkyrie is completely incapacitated. Noah Brown clashes against the Valkyrie as she fights back with desperate force. The system activates the Exsanguinator skill to begin draining her remaining blood. He leaps into the air with the spear raised high to finish the job. Knowing this is his only chance to land the strike before time runs out, the weapon makes solid contact with her armor, and he drives the spear deep into her, sealing her fate for good. The clock hits 0, and the system confirms the legendary monster is finally dead. Noah Brown stands over the body, claiming the spear as his own. Final notification echoes the victory against the level 127 boss. Exhaustion hits him hard as he realizes the battle is actually over. His legs give out and he collapses onto the bloodied floor. The shadow symbiote manifests to congratulate him on their shared success. A dark tether reaches out to inspect the fallen weapon. The prompt to consume the legendary remains glares back at him. Noah Brown presses yes to claim the spoils of his victory. Energy surges through him as the Devour skill absorbs the essence. The system confirms the Spear of Crimson End has officially bonded with him. The scene shifts as he finds himself submerged in a tranquil palace pool. Noah Brown wakes up bewildered by his sudden change in surroundings, and a small bird informs him that Avra placed him there to recover his strength. The bird warns Noah Brown that his clothes are ruined. Then he glances into the water to see a transformation in his own appearance. Realizing his eye has turned crimson and his body now bears the marks of the rot, he brushes off the bird's concern about his menacing look with a casual smirk. The creature explains how his familiar worked to keep him alive during the ordeal, and a system window confirms the Spear of Crimson End is now bonded to his soul. Swinging the weapon proves it feels less like a tool and more like an extension of his own body. Notification chime draws his attention to a massive influx of new system data. Level caps for his primary paths have skyrocketed alongside his core abilities. His base attributes show a significant leap in power and constitution. Noah Brown acknowledges these improvements are substantial enough to change the tide of any war. The bird suggests he takes his time to fully understand the new reach of his power. He interacts with the interface to see how his choices dictate his future growth. Checking the details reveals his blood-based skills now carry potent healing capabilities. Testing the Obliterate skill shows he can now channel void energy into destructive attacks. Despite the gains, he notes that his pain tolerance and rot resistance are still major concerns. He decides to dump 25 attribute points into agility and constitution to test his limits. A sudden realization stops him in his tracks as he reviews the system logs. Questioning how he avoided mana backlash leads to the conclusion that reality rules did not apply here. He thanks Avra for the recovery space before settling in to rest and master his new form. Noah Brown steps across the garden floor, and a swirling vortex of blue energy suddenly manifests behind him. Acknowledging Vati for the assistance as the rift stabilizes into a portal, the gateway widens within the palace hall to reveal an unexpected meeting. Avra greets Noah Brown with a welcoming smile, while a man and a woman sit locked in a tense game of chess. They discuss how Noah Brown's recent survival was less about skill and more about sheer luck. Noah Brown interrupts the game to clarify that his success was earned rather than accidental. The woman points out that he and his companion have grown surprisingly close during his recovery. Noah Brown jokes about his altered arm, claiming the scars and modifications actually make him look badass. His host warns him that his familiar's physique is changing and he needs to be careful about losing his own humanity. The woman confirms his transformation is already well underway. She explains that humans do not have abyssal rot coursing through their veins or arms, and reminds him that this level of rapid growth always demands a heavy price of sacrifice. The game concludes with the news that it is finally time for them to part ways. Avra insists she cannot ignore her other believers for any longer. Noah Brown offers his formal gratitude to the goddess for her hospitality. Their farewell ends with a blessing as a system prompt confirms he has gained new insights. Noah Brown waves goodbye to his companions before stepping out, and the goddess marks the end of their meeting with a sharp snap of her fingers. The goddess snaps her fingers, triggering an immediate and violent teleportation sequence. Space itself warps around Noah Brown and his companion, and they hit the hard floor of a new location with a heavy thud. Noah Brown groans at the sudden transit as his partner struggles to regain their footing. Confused guards instantly notice the two intruders appearing out of thin air, and their heavy boots thunder across the floor as they surround the pair. The soldiers identify Noah Brown as a void beast and demand he be captured immediately, before they swarm in and strike, physically forcing Noah Brown and his companion down. A massive magical surge forces the duo to stay grounded as the guards close in. The system suddenly locks Noah Brown's astral abilities, causing him intense physical agony. A commander orders the guards to stand down while he steps forward to assert control. The reptilian officer formally accuses them of trespassing in the wind-dressed astral rift, and he looms over the incapacitated pair with his armor clanking against the stone. He orders his men to drag Noah Brown and his companion to the holding cell. The squad marches the prisoners toward the dungeon under heavy armed guard. Once they are finally locked away, Noah Brown sarcastically remarks on their current predicament. His companion snaps back at him in total disbelief. She berates him for his constant recklessness after repeatedly ignoring her warnings, listing off his failures from the lost arm to the deadly parasite he foolishly injected. She calls him a monster for surviving such curses while he struggles against the suppression shackles. She cuts him off by declaring that their partnership is effectively over, leaving Noah Brown to process her cold rejection in the dim dungeon light. He quietly asks if this is truly how she feels about his path, and wonders if every choice he has made is now up for harsh judgment. A sudden, sharp jolt of magical feedback ripples through her body, forcing her to recoil against the cold stone wall. She winces while admitting that losing her passive perks makes her feel vulnerable and weak. But Noah Brown offers a soft compliment by telling her that this version of Aurelia Foster feels more authentic, which causes her to visibly soften her stance toward him. Acknowledging that the lecture was perhaps a bit too much for him to handle, he admits his own impulsive nature and agrees that he has been acting like a total fool lately. Their tense standoff finally dissolves into a quiet moment of mutual understanding, until they both break into soft laughter at the absurdity of their situation. The heavy, rhythmic sound of footsteps approaches the cell from the corridor. An armed guard turns the iron key in the lock. The heavy door creaks open to reveal a stern officer waiting to process them. He demands they state their names, to which Aurelia Foster identifies herself immediately. The guard consults his digital interface and notes her status as a low-ranking E-class adventurer. He questions their motive for entering the astral rift, and she claims she's only here to keep Noah Brown from dying, while Noah Brown silently worries about how he can possibly explain his erratic behavior to the authorities. The guard presses Noah Brown on his connection to the creature, but Aurelia Foster steps in to verify his registration and clear up the confusion, and the officer snaps magic-dampening shackles onto Noah Brown's wrists before ordering him to follow, leaving an ignored and frustrated Aurelia Foster behind in the cell. As the heavy door slams shut to seal the room, Noah Brown lets out a weary breath once he realizes he is alone. Knowing he needs to force his way into his internal system before the interrogation begins, the magic shackles hum with energy as he pushes his mana against the restraints. He forces his interface to materialize through the barrier. The strain causes his body to convulse as the system begins to crack open. A breakthrough finally registers on his display. Noah Brown sees his status window unlock and quickly pivots to the perks menu, concentrating all his remaining energy into a single command. The effort triggers a massive pulse of power that ripples through the room. His body takes a heavy toll, but the Voidborn perk is successfully triggered. He wobbles on his feet while checking the new perk's hidden details. The system confirms the perk is active and fully concealed, and the immediate surge of void energy begins to course through his veins. Noah Brown fights to stabilize his breathing while the physical feedback leaves him drained. So he crouches in the dark corner just as the cell door begins to creak open again. The guard demands his name, and Noah Brown complies while hiding his internal panic, noticing a strange pressure as if his soul is being scanned by the guard's equipment, where the interface identifies him as a rank F adventurer to mask his true potential, requiring Noah Brown to follow the guard toward an audience with higher authority. The guard refuses to unlock the dampening shackles despite his request for freedom, leading them into a grand hall where the governor questions Noah Brown's origins, while a mysterious woman stands beside him to act as his sole advocate, arguing that his lack of kingdom registration stems from his unique, unclassified nature. So the woman boldly steps forward to vouch for his questionable background, yet the governor remains suspicious of the symbiotic fusion he senses within Noah Brown, pointing out the potential catastrophic damage he could have caused to Windrest. Although the woman calmly refutes the possibility that the goddess Avra's rift could collapse, forcing the governor to remind them that laws exist to maintain order, while he signals his subordinates to monitor the situation more closely, listening to a hushed report from the guard about the recent developments in the cell, when the sudden arrival of a new figure breaks the tension in the room, causing Noah Brown to look up in shock at the person entering the chamber. As Nay marches toward them with an expression of cold, professional intensity, walking past Noah Brown without a word to address the governor directly, where she apologizes for the trouble caused and asserts her authority over his actions. Nay confirms that Resar refuses to back down from the initial agreement, forcing the governor to acknowledge that Noah Brown is now effectively part of their guild. So he demands an explanation from Noah Brown regarding his true intentions for joining, then tosses the shackles onto the table with a sharp metallic ring, while Noah Brown kicks his boot against the floor in clear frustration, as he holds up the magically binding contract and insists that Noah Brown sign it immediately, which leaves Noah Brown no choice but to press the agreement button on the glowing interface. And Nay quickly pulls him away, offering one final apology to the governor for the entire ordeal, before the two of them exit the heavy chamber and step out into the sunlight, where Nay immediately turns to confront Noah Brown about the headache he caused, warning him that just because she bailaid him out does not mean they're finished, which leaves Noah Brown genuinely confused by the sudden shift in her tone, but Nay follows up her lecture with a swift kick to his shin, reminding him that as an adventurer now he needs to start acting like a professional, though Noah Brown can only nod nervously in response to her aggressive guidance, and Nay grips his shoulders to pull him close for a more private conversation, whispering that she examined his astral script and noticed the unusual hidden sub-attributes, so she presses him to reveal exactly what kind of monster he really is, leaving Noah Brown visibly tense as he tries to deflect her intense scrutiny, until she clicks her tongue in annoyance, accepting that he will not give up his secrets yet. Nay pivots mid-stride, demanding to know how Noah Brown managed to manifest two separate divine perks, while Noah Brown stares back in disbelief that she managed to spot those hidden traits, because the system interface confirms he holds Avra's blessing, a rare boon that grants accelerated learning, yet the second perk, Fate Touched, marks him as a magnet for unpredictable trouble, explaining why the gods could not stop his recent arrest since divine entities are strictly forbidden from overriding state laws, and she notes that his deal with the governor should have kept him out of trouble, so she shifts the conversation to ask if Noah Brown knows anyone else marked by fate, but he admits his memory of arriving here is completely blank and fragmented, leaving Nay to pause as she realizes he is actually telling the truth. Then she questions if he has ever encountered an ascendant during his travels, showing him a system projection that displays nothing but a wall of question marks, which makes Noah Brown realize he is totally out of his depth regarding these entities, so the two of them head inside a lavish estate to meet with a contact, where they find a high-ranking knight waiting for them in the main parlor, revealing the man is none other than West Ivan, a powerhouse knight dressed in shimmering plate armor, who stands up to greet his guests with an air of absolute authority, and West Ivan formally introduces the party members, specifically acknowledging Orlia Foster and Noah Brown, while the system identifies the knight as a formidable Hellions paladin. But the reunion turns sour when Ney immediately places Noah Brown under house arrest, threatening to throw him back into the governor's dungeon the second he tries to leave on his own. Noah Brown admits he made a mistake but argues a pay cut is harsh, because Ney insists that endangering Orlia Foster is unacceptable behavior for any adventurer, while Ney acknowledges his talent but warns him that trust is the real currency here, and Orlia Foster wonders aloud why she has not already cut ties with him for his recklessness. But Orlia Foster pivots to defend Noah Brown by noting there is more to him than just being an outerworlder, since he has saved her life twice and remains a vital support for her goals, which is why Orlia Foster is willing to give him another chance despite his past blunders, and she tells Ney that his presence on their current quest is actually invaluable, so Ney gives in with a reluctant shrug before ordering them to get vetted by West Ivan. As the group follows the paladin through the grand estate to a private chamber, where West Ivan explains he needs to use an ability that judges the purity of one's soul, warning that he must confirm they are not part of any cults, necromancers, or demonic factions, and West Ivan promises the process will feel like nothing more than a warm light, so Noah Brown nervously asks if this pact will hurt, only to be told it will not. While the room fills with a golden radiance as West Ivan initiates the ritual, and Noah Brown hesitates for a split second before deciding to go through with it, as the two of them step into the glowing circle to face the divine scrutiny, then a massive angelic figure descends from the light to initiate the light of judgment system check, while the celestial presence begins to peer directly into their very essence. But a sudden system error flags Noah Brown as a devourer and the judgment turns hostile. West Ivan realizes the divine flames are not consuming Noah Brown entirely, and the system's judgment circle fails to purge him as expected, so Noah Brown activates his pain tolerance skill while only his arm takes the brunt of the holy fire, which forces the room into a tense standoff as West Ivan draws his blade, and the cold steel clicks into place against Noah Brown's throat. As the paladin demands to know what kind of entity he is actually dealing with, but Ney intercedes to stop West Ivan, pointing out that Noah Brown remains completely unaffected by the holy judgment, and she explains that void users are not inherently evil, just misunderstood by those blinded by prejudice. So Ney urges everyone to refocus on the abyssal cult currently operating in the shadows, and Noah Brown grits his teeth, clearly annoyed by the immediate threat to his life. Until West Ivan finally relents and offers an apology to Ney and Orlia, but Noah Brown sarcastically calls out the paladin for skipping an apology to him, so West Ivan sneers that he should be thanking Orlia for saving his neck, and the two men trade petty insults before finally cooling off. Then Ney shifts the mood by pulling out a dossier to discuss their next move, as she reveals they have a plan to deal with Orlia's former party. So the group gathers around the table to analyze the threat, and they confirm the opposition consists of 3 specific individuals. As the files show Garrett, Evans, and Alta, all dangerous high-ranking targets, then Ney outlines Garrett's role as the D-rank brawler leading the pack. Evans is their next target, an E-rank ranger packing volcanic steel blades and toxic traps, and Alta joins the list as a dangerous blood mage specializing in forbidden arts. So Ney suggests they should ideally ambush the trio rather than fighting fair, which leads to Noah Brown claiming Garrett since his berserker stats can handle the pressure. Then Ney points out that West Ivan's divine protections make him immune to most poisons, so she tasks the paladin with countering Evans while keeping their remaining member on Alta duty, and with the plan finalized, Ney slams her hands down to signal the start of their prep. Before revealing she has already secured a wyvern to speed their travel toward Aquarius, so she gives them until dawn to rest before they have to depart. Then Ney dismisses everyone, claiming she has urgent business to attend to elsewhere, just as a character named Firebird makes a dramatic entrance through the doorway, and he presents a pair of high-end gauntlets he has been working on, which turn out to be the epic-grade Pyroclash gauntlets forged with essence of flame gemstones. So Noah Brown slides them on to test the fit and feel of the legendary gear, and the moment he pulls them tight, he starts testing their internal weight, while flames suddenly erupt around his hands with an intense, controlled heat, which proves the gear is perfectly attuned to his current power output. So Noah Brown turns to thank Firebird, clearly impressed by the quality of the craftsmanship. Then the smith humble brags about providing only the best for his clients, before jokingly reminding him that the bill for these will be quite substantial. Josiah points out the strange mark on Noah Brown's eye, and Noah Brown brushes it off as nothing more than a simple injury, but Josiah is not buying the excuse and insists he get it looked at soon. Then Josiah delivers the promised mana stones to the pair, which leaves them both satisfied with the transaction as Josiah heads out, so the duo begins walking together through the quiet stone corridors. And Orlia nudges Noah Brown to ask why he has gone so silent, which prompts a blunt question from her about whether he wants to die, because she has seen countless adventurers rise and fall just as quickly, where reckless groups eventually push their luck until they vanish for good, and she admits that fear of attachment is why she has avoided teams, letting her guard down as she reflects on the pain of losing allies. Then Noah Brown asks how long they have actually been traveling together, noting that while it has been barely a month, he feels a genuine connection, and Orlia challenges his perspective by asking if he truly wants to face death. So they continue their trek while the weight of her words hangs between them, where Orlia accuses him of still running from his past despite his claims. Then Noah Brown acknowledges her point with a quiet, contemplative nod, as the gravity of their shared journey finally begins to sink in. And they agree that while deep thought is necessary, getting lost in it is a danger. Orlai breaks the silence by poking Noah Brown, questioning why the guy who usually will not stop talking is so quiet today, and Noah Brown replies that he just prefers to watch for a bit. So Orlai decides to lighten the mood by offering a little distraction, then Noah Brown asks what she has planned for them, noting her new gauntlets and his spear are practically begging for a test run. But Orlai jokes about the spear's crimson rot, questioning if they should really risk it. Since Noah Brown spends another 25 points to boost his agility and constitution, they step into the arena and set some ground rules to avoid any lethal mishaps, where Orlai dictates that while they will not hold back, no one is dying today, and Noah Brown calls out to Tony as his spear begins to glow with dark energy, when the weapon lets out a hiss of shadows that envelops the blade. Then Noah Brown swings the dark spear through the air with practiced precision, and Orlai whistles in appreciation at his display of control, after which they both signal that they are ready to begin, so Orlai launches herself forward in a blur to close the distance. Then Noah Brown skillfully parries her heavy gauntlet strike, grinning as he realizes that she is definitely not pulling any punches, when Orlai suddenly blinks across the space to reposition. And Noah Brown pivots to keep his guard up as the sparring match intensifies. Noah Brown whips his spear around in a lethal arc, but Orlai meets the strike head-on, deflecting the blade with a casual comment, and she immediately follows up by channeling fire into her gauntlet for a massive burst. So Noah Brown blinks across the arena to dodge the explosive impact, yet he circles back instantly to swing his spear from a new angle, which Orlai catches mid-swing, mocking his speed as she locks the weapon in place. Then she yanks the spear with enough force to send Noah Brown flying across the floor, leaving the combatant gritting his teeth in frustration, and when he tries to blink out of reach, Orlai intercepts the move and shuts down his ability, explaining that aura suppression is her secret weapon, before she closes the distance to deliver a brutal, point-blank strike to his gut, driving Noah Brown into the ground with enough force to shatter the stone. While Orlai watches the dust settle with a calm, predatory smile, and the debris clears to reveal the extent of the damage, so Noah Brown picks himself up, warning her that he's done playing nice. Then Orlai preps her gauntlet for another round, and Noah Brown steadies his stance, grip tightening on his spear, declaring he has a special delivery coming her way. As he leaps high and launches the spear with terrifying velocity, forcing Orlai to dodge just in time as she claims the spar is easy enough. Orlai feels the sudden drain on her reserves, and the spear zips right past her into the void, which leaves her scrambling to find Noah Brown in the shifting mana. Then the projectile boomerangs back with even greater intensity, so Orlai tries to swat the incoming steel but catches a nasty scrape. And the graze forces her to recalibrate her defensive stance, just as she pivots to track his next move. Noah Brown closes the gap in a blur of focused aggression, leaping into the air to unleash a shadow-infused strike, causing a violent shockwave when Orlai blocks the blade, and the impact cracks the very floor beneath their feet, leaving Orlai struggling to maintain her footing in the aftermath before they lock weapons in a high-tension stalemate. Noah Brown grins while taunting her to keep up with the pace, which triggers a rapid-fire sequence of parries and counterblows, but Orlai grinds through the pressure to hold her own, while Noah Brown activates his blood drain ability to turn the tide, until he finally manages to pin her arm with a precise strike, forcing Orlai to recognize the shift in momentum, so she channels her remaining fire aura to launch one final, desperate counter. Noah Brown roars as he pushes his remaining strength into the blade, while a massive explosion of fire erupts between him and Orlai, forcing Noah Brown to brace against the searing heat of her aura, yet he manages to grab hold of her weapon before she can disengage. But the system signals a blink failure as he tries to teleport away, and Orlai capitalizes on his mistake with a brutal strike to his guard, sending Noah Brown skidding backward across the debris-filled arena. Then Orlai declares it is her turn while igniting her fist with flames, following up with a relentless barrage of explosive punches at Noah Brown, who struggles to parry the heavy blows as the clanging steel fills the air until Orlai closes the distance to deliver a finishing strike, but Noah Brown swings his weapon in a desperate arc to intercept her, allowing him to catch her off guard and initiate a grapple, which triggers another blink attempt to escape her reach. Though the mana feedback leaves Noah Brown flickering and exposed, so the system warns him that his mana reserves are critically low, which gives Orlai the opening to seize him midair. Then she tilts his body to slam him down with crushing force, driving Noah Brown into the stone floor with a bone-shaking impact, and the heavy toll of the fight finally forces a pained cry from him. Orlai lands a final, clean strike square on Noah Brown's face. Then she secures her grip to ensure the spar is officially finished, leaving a battered Noah Brown to process the end of the exchange, while he tries to regain his bearings after being driven into the stone, as a flicker of red energy reveals his system is reacting to the damage, and Orlai concedes the win while complimenting how strong he has become, so she reaches out to pull Noah Brown up from the floor, noting the 40-level gap between them and encouraging him to use his perks. Although Noah Brown points out that those same abilities are a double-edged sword, while Orlai admits his teleportation and healing are incredibly frustrating to counter, and they both agree to move past the tension with a lighthearted moment, as Noah Brown acknowledges he feels significantly better after their talk, while Orlai watches him with a calm smile that shifts the atmosphere, and she reaffirms their bond, reminding him that they look out for one another. So they agree to rest up for tomorrow's quest to purify the Crimson Rot, but a sudden massive wave of agony pulses through Noah Brown's body, just as the pain-tolerant skill reaches its time limit and drops, causing him to collapse instantly in a display of sheer raw suffering, while Orlai rushes to his side to see the red haze taking him over, and she desperately tries to stabilize Noah Brown as his body fails him again. Orlai shouts at Noah Brown to snap out of his delirium. And the sharp command finally breaks through his intense episode, letting Noah Brown catch his breath as the agonizing pain begins to recede. While he asks what happened after coming back to his senses in the courtyard, though Orlia checks his condition, Noah Brown remains dazed by the lingering aftereffects, until they both look up to see a massive creature looming in the night sky, which turns out to be a juvenile dragon waiting for them with two companions. And the sheer scale of the beast leaves Noah Brown and Orlia completely floored, so a system notification confirms the dragon is only a juvenile, while their guide assures them they are definitely not heading into full-scale war, and the guide presents a specialized tracker she spent all night crafting for the mission, which will help Noah Brown and Orlia pinpoint the location of the Iron Fists, so he takes the device from her and prepares for the journey ahead. While the group mounts the massive dragon for their swift departure, and the guide waves goodbye as the beast takes flight into the clouds, which carries Noah Brown and Orlia toward their confrontation with the Iron Fists, as the dragon gains altitude and speeds away from their starting point, and Noah Brown checks his improved stats from the recent training to steel his resolve, while Orlia notices him looking nervous about the height and teases him about flying. But Noah Brown nervously asks how often people actually fall off these things. Orlia reassures Noah Brown that he just needs to hold on tight, when the tracker suddenly pings to signal the Iron Fists are nearby, so their companion commands everyone to descend quietly to avoid detection, and the juvenile dragon dives sharply toward the forest floor, while the intense wind blasts the group during their rapid descent, as the beast levels out just before slamming into the trees. And the dragon skids across the clearing to come to a sudden halt, finally dropping them off at the edge of the dense woodland, which leaves the party reeling from the rough and jarring arrival, until Noah Brown shakily steps onto solid ground, and he jokes about missing the earth while Orlia teases him for his shaky legs, as the dragon settles down and everyone catches their breath, while their companion reminds them that they have no time to waste. And Noah Brown focuses his intent on taking down the heathens, so Orlia points them toward the path that the targets took, while she confirms the group is hiding inside a nearby cavern, and Noah Brown pumps his fist with renewed determination to finish the job, as the trio moves out toward the cave entrance, while the forest falls silent around the entrance to the lair, and the team approaches the crystal-filled tunnel to initiate their ambush. Noah Brown spots a cluster of water mana stones glowing along the stream, but their guide notes that everything seems unnervingly quiet for a cultist hideout, so the trio splits up to investigate the branching paths of the cavern, and they carefully navigate the crystalline tunnel to avoid making a sound. While the group advances deeper into the heart of the cave, their point man suddenly stops them in their tracks, and he motions for Noah Brown and the others to hold their position. Then he launches himself forward at top speed to intercept a shadow, catching the unsuspecting scout completely off guard with a swift strike. His blade flashes through the dim tunnel in a single lethal arc, which leaves Noah Brown and his ally wondering about the sudden hostility, for a lone cultist emerges from the darkness right into the ambush, and the point man drives his sword straight through the target, silencing the man before he can even sound an alarm for his comrades. Then the body hits the wet stone floor with a heavy thud, after which the warrior turns back to signal that the coast is clear, so the group regroups to inspect the fallen cultist for any useful information, and they discover the man was hiding in plain sight among the mana crystals, noting the telltale symbol of the crimson cultist marked on his gear, while their guide confirms that more enemies are lurking further down the path. Noah acknowledges the plan, signaling he is ready to engage. And he launches himself forward at high speed toward the unsuspecting cultists, closing the distance with a blink step that puts him right in their midst, where he pierces the first target with a lethal strike to the chest, causing the cultist to choke as his life force begins to wane, while Noah activates his skill to drain the man's blood and inject necrotoxins, and the dying enemy drops his gear before collapsing completely onto the floor, confirming the system notifications for 2 confirmed kills for the party, so they waste no time moving deeper into the dark cavern, only to spot an abyssal executioner looming ahead with a massive curved blade, whose level is hidden from their sight, indicating a significant threat, which prompts Nay to step forward and offer to draw the giant's attention, as she creates a distraction that successfully baits the hulking warrior, catching him off balance just long enough to put him on the defensive. Then she turns and sprints away to lure the brute into a trap, with the executioner blindly pursuing her deeper into the tunnel system, though he raises his heavy sword to prepare for a powerful counterattack. But Noah intercepts the giant with a swift, punishing strike from behind, while their armored ally closes in to press the advantage with a dash, and they force the executioner to block a flurry of coordinated attacks. The abyssal executioner takes a deep, clean hit to the neck, and the momentum sends him spiraling backward into the cavern wall, so Noah seizes the opening to close the distance with a tactical dash. Then the party surrounds the disoriented warrior before he can recover his footing. Realization of his impending defeat hits the Guardian as he sees them closing in, which triggers an explosive burst of magical fire from their companion, whose flames slam directly into the brute with earth-shattering force, creating a searing pillar of heat that incinerates the immediate area, and the shockwave leaves the executioner pinned against the stone, allowing Noah to launch a final high-speed strike straight at his core, connecting with a brutal impact that forces the life right out of him, while their armored teammate steps forward to ensure the threat is neutralized. And one decisive final slash decapitates the abyssal executioner for good. Then the system confirms the kill, awarding them victory over the level 32 boss, leaving the party standing over the fallen giant in the quiet tunnel, so they exchange a quick nod and decide it is time to move on. Meanwhile, a mysterious, ornate gauntlet begins to materialize in the empty air, and the group feels an unnatural tug as the environment starts to shift. Until the chamber itself begins to rumble and collapse around their feet, forcing them to brace for whatever strange event is about to unfold next. The party spots the Iron Fists gathered around a central altar where two D-rank cultist chiefs oversee the ritual, and they note three shackled hostages kept right at the base, so the team decides to hold back and watch the situation. Then Noah splits the group, staying behind to cover the perimeter. While Orlaya and her partner move in to scout the altar's defenses, creeping through the shadows toward the massive stone entrance, where Orlaya blinks into position to monitor the cultist's conversation, and she hears a cultist chief complaining about a missing quota, because the group only brought 3 hostages instead of the 5 promised, despite the difficulty of capturing adventurers alive for the ritual, which the cultist dismisses as an excuse for their failure. Claiming the sacrifice demands are non-negotiable for their dark transaction, when suddenly a blade slashes across the chief's face, and he spins around to face the attacker standing in the shadows, demanding to know why a weapon was drawn against him, while the other cultist tries to de-escalate the rising tension. As the hidden party watches the internal conflict reach a breaking point, then Noah peers out from his vantage point to assess the opening. And he marks the location of the cages to prepare for the rescue. Noah reaches the first cage and signals the hostage to stay quiet, who explains that a specific rune carved onto a slate unlocks these barriers, so Noah asks her to sketch the design into the dirt for him, and he traces the pattern precisely to mimic the magical signature, channeling his own mana to replicate the required resonance, which causes the lock to click open under his manipulation. Then Noah instructs the freed hostage to regroup with his teammate outside, while she cautiously slips away into the shadows of the dungeon, and Orlaya clears the surrounding area to maintain their path of escape, leaving Noah to focus on the final remaining prisoner, who he quickly releases by applying the same runic technique, revealing a hulking beastkin who steps out from behind the bars, but a dark entity manifests behind Noah the moment he turns around, causing him to whip his head toward the sudden murderous presence, just as a blade whistles through the air directly at his throat, and the steel connects with Noah's skin, drawing a line of crimson before the shadow attacker slams into him with crushing physical force, which leaves Noah reeling as he realizes his opponent is significantly faster, while his system logs multiple status debuffs from the surprise strike. And he fights to stay conscious despite the encroaching paralysis spreading through his limbs. A projectile pierces straight through Noah, forcing a pained scream from his lips, as a potioncraft ranger steps from the shadows to claim the credit, pinning Noah down and locking his astral script to ensure he stays incapacitated, while the assailant turns his attention toward Orlaya and her injured companion, and the realization of his identity hits Orlaya like a physical blow, making her demand to know how he managed to survive the previous encounter. But he only mocks her for bringing unwanted attention to their secret location, insisting he had handed her off to the cultists deep within the Lost Woods, leaving no possible way for her to have escaped that trap alive, despite the elf standing by his side pointing out the massive disaster they now face. So the ranger turns toward his brute subordinate to issue a new command, ordering him to hunt down the 2 escapees who just fled the scene, and the hulking fighter steps forward, ready to carry out his master's will, while the elf argues that they should just slaughter everyone to cover their tracks, but the ranger refuses, knowing a guild raid would be far worse than leaving them. Then he leans in close to taunt Orlaya with his twisted sense of superiority, spitting in her face to drive home just how trapped she really is, declaring that the guild will descend upon them the moment they realize what happened, and he carelessly wipes the blood from his hand as her desperate lies fall apart, before driving his fist into her stomach to silence her once and for all. Orlaya hits the ground hard, finally silenced by the brutal strike, and the potioncraft ranger shifts his focus to the remaining sacrifices, while the elf points out that one captive lacks the necessary life force. But the antagonist notices Noah has more than enough power to spare, so he yanks the weapon from Noah's chest with a sickening, wet tear. Then Noah collapses, blood pooling around him as the antagonist looms closer, mocking Noah's shredded state while marveling at the sheer durability of his flesh, before realizing the boy is host a dangerous, forbidden abyssal parasite, and he squeezes Noah's face in disbelief that the kid is still holding onto life, until the elf snaps him back to reality, demanding the ritual begin immediately, so the brute subordinate hoists the unconscious Orlaya over his shoulder, while she thrashes in his iron grip, screaming for him to let her go, and Noah reaches out to touch the antagonist's cloak, triggering a hidden connection, which instantly locks his astral script and shuts down his normal menu access, forcing Noah to desperate measures as he commands his own system to reveal itself. But the intense strain of the system override tears through his damaged body, though the gambit works, successfully boosting his core attributes in the nick of time, so Noah pops a healing item to stabilize his vitals before finishing his move. Then he blindsides the brute with a lethal counterstrike, catching him completely off guard while the antagonist watches on, realizing the ritual he planned is about to face hell. The ritual chamber falls into a heavy, suffocating silence, and the impatient antagonist decides to investigate why his executioner has not returned, so he stalks down the dark corridor toward the main altar, discovering the magic circle already active with bodies sprawled across the runic floor, where Noah stands battered and bleeding, his body struggling under the weight of his own power, yet he forces the reanimated Tony to rise and wait for his next command. Then the antagonist rounds the corner, catching the sudden shift in the room's energy, before a blinding pillar of light erupts from the center of the ritual site, and a warrior charges forward, his blade clashing against the sudden defensive barrier, revealing the attacker's cold, focused eyes as he zeroes in on his target, who screams in agony as Eva is struck down right before his eyes, leading the enraged antagonist to howl in fury at this unexpected interference. While Noah bites through the pain, his system spiking as his stats undergo a massive, forced metamorphosis. Then shadow tendrils lash out, tearing through the arena and forcing the cultists to scatter, causing the remaining subordinates to flee the chaotic energy flooding the chamber. As a localized explosion of force shatters the air between the combatants, followed by a surge of raw, burning power wrapping around the combatants, where the transformed warrior unleashes a primal roar that shakes the very foundations, and the dark energy consumes the space, twisting the reality of the ritual itself. So the warrior Garrett engages the enemy, pulling him into a lethal, high-stakes collision. Garrett swings his heavy blade with full force, colliding against the enemy's steel, while the Potioncraft Ranger notches an arrow, tension building in the bowstring, then releases a glowing bolt that streaks across the chamber like a laser, forcing Noah to deflect the projectile midair with a sharp, metallic strike, as he sneers at the interruption and denies them any chance of escape. Launching himself into the air to close the distance instantly, despite the hail of daggers thrown his way by the hidden attackers, which he parries with ease before taunting them for their pathetic aim, then blinks across the battlefield to reappear behind the unsuspecting ranger, his eyes locking onto the next target with predatory, cold calculation, before he unleashes a blood-red chain whip that pierces the ground in a wide arc. Swinging the weapon toward the ranger who realizes too late that he is cornered, and the strike connects with brutal efficiency, leaving the ranger gasping for air, so Noah blinks again to bypass the remaining defensive line entirely, grabbing the enemy leader by the throat in a crushing, one-handed grip, then yanks a hidden blade through the leader's chest to sap his vitality, driving the spearhead deeper until it emerges from the other side. As the system notification confirms the life drain ability has successfully activated, allowing Noah to glance at the carnage he has just orchestrated with complete indifference. While the leader collapses to the floor, his life force fully depleted by the spear. Noah yanks the chains tight, securing his hold on the fallen leader, a sharp grin spreading across his face as the life essence flows into him, and the system confirms he has successfully eliminated the Blood Reaper and Life Mage. Counting down the final seconds of his temporary power-up as he teleports away, reappearing instantly to clash blades with West Ivan in the narrow corridor, where West Ivan barely evades a lethal strike by leaping against the stone wall, Noah laughing wildly while his aura flares into a dangerous, crimson-tinted display, West Ivan watching the display with growing concern behind his hooded mask, but he manages to dodge another sweeping attack by ducking low to the ground. Noah pivots midair, spinning his body to snap out and grab West Ivan's arm, driving a razor-sharp energy blade straight through his opponent's chest in one motion. And West Ivan realizes he is finished as the blade pierces his vital organs, Noah landing on the wall to watch his enemy slump against the floor in defeat, West Ivan coughing up blood, unable to comprehend how the gap closed so fast. Then he hits the ground hard as Noah drops down to finish the job. Noah heaving for air, his body finally reaching the limit of his exertion, yet he revels in the victory as the metamorphosis timer drops to 0, the system flooding his vision with status updates and a notification to rank up, while an archer in the distance draws back a final, desperate arrow and a warrior charges forward with a flaming fist, desperate to avenge West Ivan. The vengeful warrior closes the distance, raining down a barrage of flaming strikes on Noah, who grit his teeth as he realizes his defensive stamina is failing him. Their weapons collide in a shower of sparks, the attacker screaming about his deception, and a heavy blow lands directly into Noah's midsection, forcing the air from his lungs. The warrior follows up with a rapid dash, attempting to capitalize on Noah's weakened state. Then she slams her fist into the ground, sending a shockwave that rattles the entire chamber. Rage contorts her face as she grips her gauntlet, ready to deliver a crushing blow. Waves of heat radiate from her body, illuminating the surrounding ruin with blinding light, while the remaining cultists watch from the shadows, haunted by the memories of the fallen, and the weight of that collective agony fuels the warrior's relentless assault on Noah. Demanding to know why he betrayed their cause as she lands another barrage, she swings with a desperate, sweeping motion to catch him off guard. Noah barely parries the slash, retreating to create distance between himself and the flaming blade, coughing up blood. He struggles to stand while defending his actions through the pain. She shouts that his betrayal is unforgivable, her hand glowing as she draws on her power, but Noah just laughs, a cold and twisted expression spreading across his bruised face, mocking her moral outrage. He reveals that every action he took was simply a job. They lock weapons again, the force of the impact cracking the stone floor beneath them. Noah absorbs the brunt of her strike. Countering with a precise, brutal kick to her guard, she staggers back, realizing with growing dread that every one of his counters hits harder than the last. Ignoring the pain, she lunges forward to deliver a final, crushing blow, screaming for her allies to strike now. She pours every ounce of her remaining strength into the attack. Leaping into the air, she spins her blade to rain down destruction upon Noah. Fire erupts from her palm as she descends, turning her strike into a massive, explosive shockwave. The ground shatters under the sheer intensity of the blast, but Noah manages to evade the center of the impact. Her sword bites deep into the stone, sending shards of debris flying into the surrounding air, skidding backward to maintain his footing. Noah keeps his guard up against the lingering heat. He taunts her by pointing out her lower level, dismissing her fierce assault as a predictable target. She pauses, her mind flooding with the agonizing memories of the nights she spent in captivity, hearing the phantom screams of the victims pleading for help. She's overwhelmed by the weight of their collective suffering. The realization that the entity she serves was birthed from their tormented souls shatters her resolve, realizing that Noah's cold-blooded contract was the direct cause of that atrocity. She turns her grief into blinding rage. Noah laughs off her moral superiority, insisting that he only cares about the paycheck. She recoils in genuine revulsion at his lack of remorse, declaring that he makes her sick. Mana explodes around her as she ignites her fury. While Noah prepares for her reckless charge, their weapons collide with a deafening ring, sparks flying as she forces the engagement. She dashes across the floor, closing the gap before Noah can recover his stance. Slamming a fiery palm into his chest, she sends Noah flying back with the force of her hatred. Recovering his balance, Noah wipes blood from his lip and admits her speed has actually improved, but he refuses to back down, snarling that it is finally his turn to end this. The unnamed female fighter swings her weapon in a wide arc, leaping forward to close the distance as Noah braces for the impact. She unleashes a flaming chain that pierces straight through his armor, jerking him off his feet with a violent pull, slamming him into the ground with a massive explosion of fire. Noah skids backward but manages to keep his footing. Electricity courses through his body from a fresh strike, forcing him to endure a localized shockwave. He lands hard but immediately readies his counter. The fighter grimaces, feeling the strain of her own assault. Noah dashes across the debris toward her, colliding with her in a brutal clash of intent. He lands a heavy blow while mocking her descent into madness. The system locks her in place, paralyzing her under the weight of her own flames. Noah goads her to push her rage to the absolute limit. Her resolve wavers as she realizes he is baiting her into losing control. He shifts his focus to the fallen Garrett, threatening to finish off the dying man right in front of her. The sight of Garrett helpless breaks her final hold on sanity. And Noah laughs, reveling in the chaos he has successfully manufactured. The unnamed fighter lunges for a mana stone, desperate to stabilize Garrett while the system confirms her consumption of the item. A massive surge of power floods her body, doubling her capacity and boosting her attributes by 100 points. Noah watches her transformation with a flicker of recognition. Memories of his brief time with others surface as he reflects on his own journey. Finding an unexpected sense of satisfaction in the chaos of traveling with someone else, Garrett takes a fatal strike, his armor failing as the blade pierces deep, offering a final, hollow apology before the life drains from him. The unnamed fighter screams in agony as the system activates her Path of the Flame Warden. Orlia Foster rises to rank E, her body erupting in a lethal mantle of fire. System windows confirm her massive stat spike as the flames consume her surroundings. Noah takes a direct, piercing hit as the battle enters a desperate new phase. Cackling with manic energy, he welcomes the challenge and demands even more from her. Orlia Foster launches herself at Noah with chains of fire, fueled by her absolute fury over Garrett's death. Their collision triggers a shockwave that tears through the immediate area. Noah grins through the pain as his body adapts, granting him newfound resistance to lightning. Orlia Foster lands a crushing blow, slamming her weapon into his guard. They trade punishing strikes in a blur of motion. The force of their exchange shatters the surrounding structure, and Noah stands his ground, watching as Orlia Foster prepares her next lethal move. Noah taunts Orlia Foster through the blood, daring her to escalate the violence, flames engulfing them both as she unleashes her full fury in a desperate final barrage. Desperation twisting her features as she pours every ounce of her mana into the attack, but a hand suddenly clamps down on her wrist to snap her out of the bloodlust. Noah stops her, pointing out the cold truth that Garrett has already passed away. And as the reality of death settles in, the system confirms both have hit their level caps. Orlia Foster gasps for breath, the fire in her eyes fading into a hollow, broken stare, realization of her own actions hitting her as she processes the loss. She looks up at Noah, finally snapping back to reality as she calls his name in a whisper. The two of them stand alone in the wreckage of the arena, surrounded by the fallen, looking toward the perimeter. She spots the body of the unnamed swordsman lying still, guilt consuming her as she admits she was the one who insisted he join the fight, cradling his cooling body in her arms. She breaks down completely. Noah watches her grief, unable to offer comfort as the gravity of the situation takes hold. His gaze shifts, scrutinizing the fallen man's body with a sudden, sharp intensity, realizing the swordsman's life has not been fully extinguished. Noah urges her to hold on. He explains that Mother Helion's judgment might still be lingering, but there is a chance for survival. Darkness falls over the forest as time passes following the lunar eclipse. A creature darts through the brush, moving with unnatural speed toward the quiet glade, and it lets out a piercing cry, signaling the arrival of a new, unseen threat in the woods. The creature pounces on its prey in a blur of motion, and blood sprays across the forest floor as it makes the kill. The system identifies the predator as a level 27 murder bunny, a ruthless kinslayer. It quickly finishes the meal and prepares to move on. Bounding through the dark woods, the monster scans the area for the scent of the red drink, pausing to sniff the air. It wonders where its target could be hiding. Moving deeper into the shadows, the beast continues its hunt. Suddenly a wave of overwhelming dread washes over the bunny. Sensing a massive, terrifying presence watching from the dark, instinct screams at the creature to flee the area immediately. Yet a twisted grin spreads across its face as it fights back the urge to retreat. Reminding itself that it is a predator, not a coward, the bunny sheds its fear through a burst of raw madness. Stepping into the entrance of the worm offspring's cave, it stalks down the damp tunnel, further into the lair. Reaching the central chamber, it finds the source of the immense energy. A serpent-like guardian rises from the ground, hissing at the intruder. The bunny recognizes the powerful, life-filled scent radiating from the worm. Hungering for that stolen power, it prepares to strike the massive beast, and launches itself headfirst into the collision with the guardian. Launching a precision strike, the murder bunny closes the distance in a blur, weaving through the air with deadly intent to secure the kill, driving its horn deep into the worm offspring's neck to disable the beast. The serpent struggles in vain as the predator pins it to the ground, wrestling for control. The bunny tightens its grip to finish the job, hurling the creature aside to finalize the devastating assault, tearing through the scales with relentless savage efficiency. Watching the life drain out as the worm offspring collapses, a system notification confirms the legendary beast is finally dead. Catching the lingering scent of mana, the bunny begins to feast, savoring the taste of stolen power. It hungrily consumes the remains, stripping the life force from the fallen guardian with every bite. Letting out a satisfied sign after finishing the gruesome meal, feeling a surge of raw energy coursing through its veins, the creature undergoes a terrifying transformation as its power spikes, shifting into a new, more lethal form right before our eyes, unlocking the draconian jackalope evolution and gaining the wormblood perk. Elsewhere, a weary official groans about the mounting chaos at his desk. Someone knocks on the office door, interrupting his moment of despair, and the transformed draconian jackalope steps inside to greet him. Rhysar confirms the devastating report with his contact, and Miss Nay Celestine prepares to deliver the grim news to the council, while Rhysar insists on accompanying her to provide protection, but she gently refuses, urging him to focus on his own heavy responsibilities, and Rhysar reluctantly concedes, though his concern for her safety remains clear. After confirming her identity, Miss Nay Celestine heads straight to the chamber, where she presents the official documents before the high-ranking council members. The gathered elders scrutinize the contents with growing unease, and as the papers circulate, the atmosphere in the room shifts toward dread. Silence breaks as the full implications of the report sink in. One counselor leaps up in denial, unable to process the sheer scale of the threat, while another slams his fist down, branding the news as total madness. Miss Nay Celestine firmly asserts that the reports of an abyssal rift are accurate, and the council members finally realize the inescapable truth of their situation. As the horrifying reality of impending war settles over the room like a shroud across the city, Noah finally stirs from his deep, recuperative sleep. Blinking his eyes open, he feels the weight of his recent evolution. While Orlai keeps a constant vigil at his bedside, she notices him waking up and moves to check on his condition, and Noah turns to meet her gaze, sensing the shift in the world around them. Orlai stares at Noah, clearly relieved that he is finally conscious, though Noah immediately tests his luck by poking her, wondering if he is actually dreaming, and he quickly learns that pain is very much real when she decides to retaliate. But Orlai's eyes well up with tears the moment the reality of his recovery hits her. She does not hold back, slamming a book right onto his head to put an end to his teasing. Noah reels back from the impact, demanding to know what prompted such a violent reaction. Turning away to hide her face, Orlai refuses to explain why she is suddenly crying, leaving Noah confused as he holds the book, trying to process her sudden emotional shift. He calls out to her softly, realizing he is finally back among the living. She keeps her back to him for a moment, composing herself before turning around. A genuine smile breaks across her face as she welcomes him back to the world. Noah learns that he has been in a coma for 10 long days, and Orlai explains that the healers had no idea how to treat his mysterious condition. Shifting the topic, Noah asks if she noticed his recent rank up despite the unorthodox path he took. He inquires about her West, but Orlai tells him the knight is not here, though he is alive thanks to Noah. Turning to more pressing business, Noah asks for the status of the cultist they captured, and Orlai confirms the prisoner is still in their custody, awaiting further questioning. She insists that he needs a proper checkup from a healer before they discuss anything else. Pausing at the door, she brings up his previous existential talk about wanting to die, and reveals that despite the goddess offering her paradise, she chooses to keep living by his side. Noah counters her point by questioning how he could possibly fulfill any promises if he were dead. Orlai shuts the debate down with a firm demand for him to stay alive, insisting he get a checkup before they dive into the cult details. The system chimes in to confirm that the vengeful hunt quest is complete, unlocking the party system and maxing out his primary paths. Seeing the rank up notification, Noah celebrates as his core abilities and skills skyrocket in power. His stats surge even higher as soul resistance and rot resistance hit intermediate levels. With his power and agility climbing steadily, Noah pushes open the window to clear his head, looking out at the world. He acknowledges just how far he has traveled since this nightmare began. Memories of his long, brutal climb flash through his mind, reminding him of the sheer intensity of the journey and the monstrous threats he had to overcome despite the toll it takes. He realizes the path he is on is far from over, and with his new strength firmly in hand, Noah prepares to face whatever fresh hell awaits them next.